Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. Should be another great conversation. Should be awesome. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. We are going to have an awesome conversation here tonight. And I looks like we're having some technical difficulties. I want to get this going on the Rumble. But yeah, let's start it out. Let's get it rolling. We're rolling on Rockfin, and I'm going to solve the technical difficulties here with the Rumble, and we'll get going.
Of the American century, I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Alrighty, so I am now trying to solve the technical difficulties. This is interesting. I'm trying to solve the technical difficulties here. So I have not streamed with Rumble very much before. So I'm solving the technical difficulties here. I see you have to change that's the trick. Therein lies the rub, as Shakespeare would say. You have to change the stream key every time. See, that was my mistake. I did not realize that, but that's okay. That is fine. We can fix that problem right now. And so hold on with everybody. Welcome. So glad that you're here, right? This is how these things work, right? New stream key every time on the Rumble. Didn't realize that, but I'm fixing that problem right now, right? Okay. And we should be good to go. Are we good to go now? Are we streaming on the Rumble? That is the question. So now I have to go check and make sure the Rumble is actually streaming. I seem to have updated the stream key. Technical difficulties, folks. Technical difficulties. Seem to have adjusted the stream key. So let's see. Am I streaming on Rumble right now? I don't seem to be. So, okay. Don't seem to be streaming on Rumble yet. Still having difficulty. Okay. Let's see if we can get this going on the Rumble, right? I'll try it again. One more time. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's see if we are now streaming on Rumble. Let's see if it's working now. I'm so sorry about these technical difficulties. New stream key every time. Who'd have thought, right? Who'd have thought? All right. So nope, we're not streaming on the Rumble. This is interesting. We're having trouble with your streaming destination. Is it possible you're Yeah, well, you live and learn, folks. You live and learn. You know, this is very, very odd. This is very odd indeed. Let me try one more thing. I don't want to keep you all waiting here. I just like to be streaming on all platforms. But yes, so, yeah, he's telling me it's always a new stream key. Always a new stream key. Well, there you go. I didn't realize that because it's not on the Rockfin. On the Rockfin, you just have to do it one time. But I guess on Rumble, it's always a new stream key, which is fine. But I am trying to update the stream key, and it's not letting me. So let's remove it, right? And then we'll add a new destination. All right. Adding a new destination. Okay. Saying we'll start at 11:06 tonight. All right. Okay. Save. All right. And so then we should be able to have the new stream key. So I'm adding a new destination on StreamYard. You all are seeing the ugly inside behind the scenes work. That's what you're seeing right now. So sorry this is happening. That's how these things work, right? Technical difficulties. But I'm learning. You learn by doing. You learn by doing. Let's see. Did it go through? All right. So I added the server. And it says I'm through. I'm streaming on Rumble. I think I solved the problem. It says Rockfin at least says I'm streaming on the Rumble. Let's see if I'm actually streaming on the Rumble. Am I streaming on the Rumble? Yes, I am. Wow, problem solved. There you go. I solved the problem. I am so proud of myself. Thank you for your patience, everybody. We solved the problem. We are now streaming on Rumble. Technical difficulties have been resolved. It appears we are now streaming on the Rumble. Or are we? Or are we? It appears that we are, right? Are we live now? Or did it end? Or maybe we're not streaming on Rumble. I have no idea. So, no, maybe we're not. This is very odd. This is very, very, very odd. So there we go. Maybe we're not streaming. So he says Rumble good. All right. So am I streaming now on Rumble or not? Because it looks to me like I'm not. No, it's working. Okay. Someone in the chat says it is working. All right. It is working. All right. Thank goodness for that. Wow. All right. There you go, folks. We go onto a new platform. We learn the new rules of the game. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Thanks for sitting through that crazy technical difficulties. Thank you for sitting through that. It appears that we are good to go. It appears that we're good to go, and we're rolling, and it's live, and we're happy. But yeah, the way we do things on this show is what we do is I do the roll call, but I do that after I have already given my opening remarks. I give my opening remarks, which is what I'm doing right now. I give my opening remarks, and then from there we do a roll call where we find out who it is on the other side of the camera, names and locations. And then after the roll call, after the opening remarks, I then answer super chat questions for the rest of the night. That's the way it works. I answer super chat questions for the rest of the night. So if you got something you want me to talk about in the second half of our program, send me a super chat, send me a Rockfin Rockfin tip, or send me a Rumble rant. Send me your question. If you send a super chat, or you send a Rumble rant, or you send a tip, I will write your question down, and I will answer it in the second half of our program. That's the way it works. So, yeah, let's just jump right into this. Thanks, everybody, for your patience. And now, I want to start out fascism. Fascism is a term that gets thrown out quite a bit. It's a favorite term of the synthetic left. And they call Trump supporters fascists. They call anyone who disagrees with them fascists. But fascism actually does have a real meaning. And I was actually impressed to see Tulsi Gabbard on Fox News kind of get it. Not exactly, but kind of get it. This is Tulsi Gabbard. She recently appeared on Fox News, and she was talking about Biden-omics. This is what she said. Take a listen to this.
There's been a noticeable shift in the media's focus to really not run away from the economy, but to try to spin this economy as something much different than it actually is in the real life of most Americans.
Yeah, Laura, it sounds like from some of the conversations you've been having with people there in Minneapolis, they get what all of these spin doctors don't. They actually see what's happening, which is, quote unquote, Biden-omics are failing the American people. But what people in Washington are not focusing on enough is what actually is Biden-omics. Biden-omics essentially is fascism, a kind of national socialism where we have government bureaucrats and politicians partnering and colluding with these massive corporations and the ultra rich to make these business deals, picking winners and losers that serve their own self-interest and the interests of the power elite at the cost of the well-being of the American people, not only today, but in the increasing debt that they are incurring that will affect us for generations to come. And foremost, the perfect example of this, Laura, you and I have talked about this before, is the military-industrial complex. They have essentially a blank check, an unaccounted amount of spending of taxpayer dollars. And if you or I or anyone else says, hey, is all that you're spending actually strengthening our national security? Is it serving the best interests of the American people? And maybe perhaps we should know where every dollar is being spent. If we say that, we are at risk of being called unpatriotic. I've been called that before for asking these very questions. And so people aren't even allowed to challenge or question where this spending is going and how it's benefiting the American people, what to speak of our economy and everyday Americans being able to, frankly, survive and live comfortably, what to speak of prosper in the United States of America.
Now, Biden wants us all, I think, Tulsi, to kind of clap like seals since year-over-year inflation isn't as high as it was last year. But since he's taken office, consumer prices have gone up nearly 16%. We obviously know what's happened with energy costs. Now, this is something that is really hitting the middle class, the lower middle class, really, really hard. The elites are kind of gliding above it, as they usually do.
And that's exactly what we're seeing as President Biden and his administration and the elites are celebrating, quote unquote, Biden-omics. The American people know better because those successes that are being touted are actually the opposite is being felt. And again, this is where we have to hold the Biden administration, the Democrat elite, accountable. This is not about, well, we just have to message things better. That's always their answer, rather than actually looking at what the problem is, because doing that would require them to look in the mirror.
So that was very important, what Tulsi Gabbard just said there. And she was very, very correct. And it's very difficult when you're going on regular 24/7 cable news. It's very difficult to talk about these complicated concepts. She said a lot very quickly. But the first thing that's important, I think, about what you just saw there, she's talking about Biden and Biden economics. She doesn't call him a communist. Let me repeat that. She does not call him a communist, which is standard on Fox News. In conservative spaces, be it Tucker Carlson, be it Donald Trump and his rhetoric, they generally refer to Joe Biden and the woke left as socialists or communists. She didn't do that. She called them fascists. She said Biden-omics is fascism. And she pointed out that fascism is an economic system. Fascism isn't people saying nasty words. Fascism isn't, a synonym for racism. Rather, she did say that fascism is rooted in economics. And I see your super chat, your tip, Daniel J, and I'm putting it down. I'm cutting and pasting it. The Russia summit looks like an anti-imperialist summit. So I'm putting that I'm putting that on the list. Thank you, Daniel J. On Rockfin. We got our first super chat for the second half of our show, and thank you very much. So the other thing that's important is she mentions the military-industrial complex. And the military-industrial complex is fascist by definition. Hollimer Schacht, the economist of Nazi Germany, created the world's first military-industrial complex. He set up, a special bank that facilitated military spending and military loans, and they rebooted the German economy by pulling out of the Versailles Treaty and rearming the country. So this is all very important. And again, she doesn't have time to explain huge concepts. And I don't think she necessarily knows everything that she's getting at on there, right? But she doesn't know how right she is. Let me just put it that way. She did use some of the rhetoric that we use in this book, Where is America Going? She does use some of the rhetoric that we use. And in this book, Where is America Going? I talk a lot about what fascism actually means. And in this book, I go into great detail about what fascism actually means and why Biden-omics, if you want to call it that, is fascism, and how it does involve the government setting up bureaucracy to rig things in favor of the ultra-rich and hurt the economy overall. So she's right. She's right. But in order to understand how she's right, you have to understand aspects of Marxism and capitalism that are very important. So I guess I'll just quickly, when she says it's fascism, let me just put that on here, right? Because I want you to see this again.
National socialism, where we have government and doctors don't. They actually see what's happening, which is, quote unquote, Biden-omics are failing the American people. But what people in Washington are not focusing on enough,
here we go,
is what actually is Biden-omics. Biden-omics essentially is fascism, a kind of national socialism where we have government bureaucrats and politicians partnering and colluding with these massive corporations and the ultra-rich to make these...
The ultra-rich, right? She didn't say the rich. She said the ultra-rich. And I've talked about this division in the ruling class.
Business deals, picking winners and losers that serve their own self-interest and the interests of the power elite at the cost of the well-being of the American people, not only today, but in the increasing debt that they are incurring that will affect us for generations to come. And foremost, the perfect example of this, Laura, you and I've talked about this before, is the military-industrial complex. They have essentially a blank check, unaccounted amount of spending of taxpayer dollars. And if you or I or anyone else says, hey, is all that you're spending actually strengthening our national security? Is it serving the best interests of the American people? And maybe perhaps we should know where every dollar is being spent. If we say that, we are at risk of being called unpatriotic.
Yeah, she gets it. She gets it. You know, we've seen her pick up talking points from our community before. We've seen that she used some of the analysis in the Kamala Harris book. And I think, you can hear some of our rhetoric in what she's saying about the ultra rich, not just the rich. You can hear some of our rhetoric. And, I guess, I think I have the clip here, right? Apparently, according to Trevor Loudon, we are an influence on her. According to Trevor Loudon, do I have that clip here? I loved that clip when Trevor Loudon said that we were an influence on her. He said that on the podcast of Roger Stone. That was utterly beautiful when he says that. Do I have that clip here? Do I have that clip? I don't think I have that clip. I don't have that clip here, but yeah, that was a great clip. Let me see. I can pull that one up for us. Let's put that on just to put that clip in context, right? Just to put that clip in context. We'll show what CPI is credited. It's credited for. We'll put that clip on, and then we'll get into the meat of this. We want to get into the meat of this because there's a lot there. There's a lot there. So here we go. We'll show what was said. This was said on Roger Stone's podcast. This is a clip from an episode of Roger Stone's podcast last August. And this is what was said, right? This is a very important pro-Trump podcast. Had a guy who writes for Epoch Times. This is what he said.
There to promote Russian and North Korean foreign policies. She may not understand that, but she's being used by people like Dennis Kucinich and others to do that. She also has some connections to the Center for Political Innovation, which is a very pro-Russian outfit run by a man called Caleb Maupin, who used to be in the Workers' World Party. She's on the...
Did you hear that?
Has some connections to the Center for Political Innovation, which is a very pro-Russian outfit run by a man called Caleb Maupin, who used to be in the Workers' World Party. She's on the...
Now, that was a shocker to all of us when we saw it. I didn't even know about it. I don't watch Roger Stone's podcast. But when that came out, that was last August that was said. That was a big shocker to all of us. But then, since then, she has dropped little hints. I mean, she more or less quoted the thesis and the outlook of my Kamala Harris book in her interview with Jordan Peterson. Now she's talking about how Biden-omics is fascism, and it's working for the ultra-rich, and that the military-industrial complex is a big aspect of fascism. And she's straying from the standard conservative argument. Standard conservative Fox News arguments are that basically that Biden's a communist, Biden's a leftist, the only way to be a pure, good American conservative, is to be a libertarian. That's not what Tulsi Gabbard is saying. So I want to talk about why Biden-omics is fascism. I want to talk about why that is and what fascism really is. And these concepts are not simple, okay? These concepts are complicated. But that's why you all are here, right? We're here to take things to another level, right? If you just wanted sound bites, you'd turn on cable television. But you're watching me as I sit here late on Friday evening on my lovely Brooklyn apartment. I sit here and explain all of this to you. So before we can explain why Biden-omics is fascism, we have to explain why capitalism has broken down and why capitalism frequently breaks down. So we have to explain what's called the problem of overproduction, right? And this is important. These concepts are important, right? I've repeated them a lot, but they are extremely important. All right. Under capitalism, production is carried out for profit, right? A capitalist doesn't make products because he feels like it. He makes it to make a profit. In capitalism, you don't have food so people can eat it. You have food so big box stores and agribusiness can make money off of it. In capitalism, you don't have housing so people can live in it. You have housing so landlords and banks and other corporations can make money off of it, right? Capitalism is production organized for profit. And in the capitalist mode of production, you have this inherent problem, right? If you are a capitalist and you're going to make a product, you're going to need materials to make that product. So that's A. That'll be the cost of your materials. You're also going to need to ship the product, to transport the product to wherever it's being sold. So that's B. All right. Now, you can't change these costs. These are what's called fixed capital. You cannot change how much the shipping costs. It costs a certain amount. You cannot change how much the materials cost. It costs a certain amount. In addition to that, though, you're going to have your labor cost, the cost of hiring workers to assemble the product. So that's C. That's your labor cost. And all of this will add up to the total cost of the product, which is D. A plus B plus C equals D. However, there's a bit of a problem there, isn't there? The problem is the capitalist has to make a profit. And D represents the final cost of the product. And A, the shipping, that can't change. That's fixed. That's set. B, the materials can't change. That's set. So the profit that the capitalist takes out of every product is extracted from the value put into it by the worker. So you divide C1 and C2. C1 is what the worker actually gets paid out of the value that the worker puts into the product. And C2 is the profit that the capitalist extracts from the product. Right? The only way the capitalist can extract profit from each product is by cutting into the value created by the worker. And this is the problem of surplus value, right? This is the basis on which Marxists argue capitalists exploit workers, right? Because the value that workers put into each product is cut into by the capitalist in order to make his profits. However, and many people look at this, they say, well, this is wrong, right? That the worker is not getting the full value that he puts into every product. But then the capitalist looks at this and says, well, yeah, but the employer, he put up the money, he had the idea for the corporation, he's providing employment, he's risking. And that becomes an argument, right? The Marxist says this is immoral, this is exploitation, the worker's not getting the full value of his labor. The capitalist says, well, I put up the money, I'm taking the risk. And this becomes kind of a back and forth. Well, that's all a distraction. That's all a distraction. Because the actual problem with this is not simply that it's unfair, right? And we have an argument about whether this is unfair or not. The problem is this. C1 is less than D. The wages paid out in the process of production are never enough to purchase the products that are produced. In the process of hiring workers to make stuff, there's always more stuff created than there are wages paid out to the worker. The worker is also the consumer. And the wages paid out to the worker are never enough for the worker to purchase the products that he has created. And this is the basis of the boom-bust cycle in capitalism. And it's always there, right? The capitalists are always trying to deal with this, right? That you have what's called glut, where there's all kinds of products being produced and they cannot be purchased. And there's many examples of glut. In Missouri, there's a cave where the U.S. government has purchased billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of cheese and buried it. Why? To keep the price of dairy high enough that farmers don't go out of business, right? There's many examples of this. The government purchases oranges by the bunch and buries them or dumps them into the ocean. They pay farmers not to produce food. This is a really common one. Farmers get a stipend from the government for not using all the land that they own and not producing food in order that you don't have a glut in the farmer and the food market, right? To inflate the price of food. This is a constant problem in capitalism. The worker is never paid enough to buy back the product that he produces. There's always more products being created than there are wages paid out to the worker to purchase the products. This is an inherent problem of capitalism. G-L-U-T, glut. It's just built into the capitalist system. You have this problem. However, and this is the important thing, when there's a big technological leap, this problem becomes greatly intensified. What the capitalist is constantly trying to do is reduce labor costs. He can't change the cost of the shipping. He can't change the cost of the materials. But the less labor costs that he pays, the higher his profits can be. Right? He pays less for workers. He reduces the role of the worker in production. He replaces the worker with a machine. He replaces the worker with machines. He makes the worker easier to replace, less training. He de-skills the job. He ships the product overseas to somewhere where he can pay somebody 2 cents an hour to make it rather than paying the minimum wage in the United States. The capitalist is constantly trying to reduce the payout, C1, that he pays to the worker. And technological leaps are the primary way he does it, right? He eliminates labor with machines. But when C decreases, C2 also decreases because the profit of the capitalist comes from the labor. He can't cut in to the value created by the supplies. He can't cut into the value created by the shipping. He can only cut into human labor to extract his profits. And because the capitalist reduces, in order to make production more efficient, he constantly reduces the amount of human labor that goes into every product. He reduces the rate of profit that he makes on every product. And this is called the tendency of the falling rate of profit, or the tendency of the rate of profit to fall. And that is why, under the capitalist system, when you have a huge technological leap, it leads to the problem of overproduction and the problem of glut being higher than ever. If the rate of profit that the capitalist makes on each product goes down, the capitalist is forced to churn out even more products to make the same amount of profit because the rate of profit has gone down. And that when you have a big technological leap in capitalism, this leads to a long-term economic crisis. Now, in the early period of capitalism, the early years of industrial capitalism, the so-called Gilded Age that libertarians like to talk about, there was a crisis or a glut on the market, a problem of overproduction, a panic on the stock exchange every couple years. Every 1 or 2 years, the economy would completely melt down. The Federal Reserve Bank was eventually created by J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan had a meeting on Jekyll Island with a lot of other bankers and wealthy people, and they developed the Federal Reserve System as a mechanism for dealing with this ongoing problem of the capitalist system, right? This ongoing problem, right? Someone's referencing the coal miner's paradox, the coal miner's riddle, right? The story goes, the little boy says to his father, "Father, why is it so cold?" And the father says, because of the fact that we can't afford any coal to heat our home. The little boy says to the father, "Why can't we afford any coal to heat our home?" And the father says, "Because I lost my job at the coal mine. I've been laid off." The little boy says to his father, "Why have you been laid off? Why did you lose your job at the coal mine?" He says, "Because there is too much coal." That's overproduction. That's glut. That's the built-in problem of capitalism. Poverty created by abundance. And it's always there. And it used to lead to an economic meltdown every couple years. The Gilded Age of industrial capitalism involved a meltdown like this every couple years. However, the problem, this built-in problem of overproduction and the tendency of the falling rate of profit, it was something that the capitalists developed various methods to deal with. And you had, antitrust legislation. You had the Federal Reserve Bank. However, it still couldn't get over this inherent problem. In the lead up to World War I, you started to have great technological leaps, right? In the early parts of the 20th century, they were, doing pretty amazing things in terms of radios and electric lights, et cetera. And this all set the stage for World War I. World War I was a horrendous episode of mass death and killing. And what was happening was there was a big problem of overproduction. The market was glutted with products that couldn't be sold. And the Western capitalist countries, they needed to dump their excess products on captive markets. Imperialism is when These big corporations, the Western capitalist countries, seize parts of the developing world and use them as captive markets to dump their excess products on. When the British went to India, they burned all their looms and they forced them to import their cloth from British textile companies, right? Great example is, when they talk about what Bill Clinton did with NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. Mexico had been growing its own food for thousands of years, since before Christopher Columbus ever showed up. But because of NAFTA, Bill Clinton went in there, and now we dump our excess food onto Mexico. American agribusiness has put all the Mexican farmers out of business. And as a result, American farm and agribusiness dumps its excess products onto Mexico. And that the imperialist powers, France, Britain, Germany, the United States, were fighting with each other over the colonized world. Germany wanted a bigger chunk of Africa and a bigger chunk of Asia for itself. And it was fighting with the French and it was fighting with the British over the control of Africa and over the control of Asia and over the domination of the Chinese market and over Latin America and South America, right? And that the imperialism as an economic system developed out of the need to dump excess products and to have captive markets, to go to the developing world, to destroy their economy and force them to buy the products that you can't sell at home because of the problem of overproduction. And the problem of overproduction and the tendency of the falling rate of profits drives imperialism. The imperialists constantly need more and more people to buy their products. They need to eliminate competitors from the market. They need people to buy their products. And this is the problem of imperialism. Imperialism is about holding back economic development. It's about seizing parts of the world as captive markets. And the imperialist powers battle each other for control over the world markets. World War I, you'll recall, was a big confrontation. The German imperialists and the Austrian imperialists battled against the American imperialists, the British imperialists, and the French imperialists, and they lost. And Germany was stripped of its colonies. And the British and the American and the French imperialists had the upper hand. And all of Europe, pretty much, the European mainland was razed to the ground. 20 million working class people were sent to their deaths. It was an orgy of mass death and killing like humanity had never seen. Poison gas and chemical weapons were used, machine guns. World War I was an utter nightmare. And it ate up human lives, and it destroyed property, and it rebooted the global economy. And after World War I, you saw the roaring 20s. The 1920s, the economy of the world started to pick up, and it started to advance. You had the roaring 20s. Now, Germany was completely destroyed, and on top of being destroyed and losing its industrial base, Germany had to pay reparations to France and Britain and the United States for the war. It was punished and forced to pay reparations, so Germany wasn't back on its feet. But Britain and America were back on their feet, and the United States had the luxury of not having the fighting happen on American soil. And so the United States was selling products to the rest of the world, and it was the parts of the world that had been under German domination were now under American domination, and the U.S. economy did pretty well in the 1920s. In the 1920s, there was a guy named Henry Ford. Ever heard of Henry Ford? Henry Ford was an industrialist, a great pioneer of the American automobile industry. And Henry Ford developed very efficient ways of producing products. And he followed Taylorism. He closely managed the lives of his workers, would fire them if they had extramarital affairs, was paying them more than most factory workers got paid. They tended to get higher wages, but they were managed, and he studied how to make these workers very efficient on the assembly line. And Henry Ford, and, there was a guy named Taylor who was an expert in industrial efficiency. Henry Ford engineered assembly line production to be much more efficient. There were huge leaps in assembly line production. And during the 1920s, people would say that Ford has defeated Karl Marx. Henry Ford has defeated Karl Marx because they argued that Henry Ford had invented a new kind of very efficient, very advanced, productive capitalism that didn't have the problem of overproduction. Ford has defeated Marx. Ford has overtaken Marx. That was the slogan that was widely used during the 1920s. But then we know what happened, right? 1929, the stock market crashed, and all of this efficiency that had led to a boom in the 1920s led to a prolonged economic crisis called the Great Depression. And the Great Depression was because of this same problem. Because under capitalism, technological advances lead to greater poverty. The role of the worker at the assembly line is reduced. The more wealth that's created, the poorer people get. Poverty created by abundance. This is the problem of capitalism. So this is where fascism comes in, right? You have to understand this in order to understand fascism. And nobody understands this. This is basic. This is Marxism 101. This is in the Communist Manifesto. This is in Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific by Frederick Engels. This issue of poverty created by abundance, people being homeless because there are too many houses, people being hungry because there is too much food, right? The coal miner's riddle that I recited for you before, poverty created by abundance, glut. This problem is inherent to the Marxist understanding of capitalism, but nobody talks about it. It's just something that's just off limits. None of the bread tubers know what it is. They think overproduction means you make too much stuff. They don't understand this problem. No, the problem is the worker cannot buy back what he creates. Yeah, the problem is the reduction of the worker in production, the tendency of the falling rate of profits. None of them will ever talk about any of this, even though this is intrinsic. This is essential to understanding Marxism, right? Marxism doesn't just say greed is bad. Marxism doesn't just say greedy capitalists don't care about their workers. It has a scientific understanding of how, under capitalism, poverty is created by abundance. The more wealth that is created, the greater technology advances, the poorer everyone gets. This is Marxism. So when you have this problem, how do you deal with it? How do you deal with this problem? Well, let me take you back to Britain. In, I believe it was like the 1790s in Britain, in the aftermath of the French Revolution, there was a guy named Robert Malthus. And Robert Malthus was an economist in Britain, and he argued that the problem of the French Revolution, this mass episode of unrest that had overthrown feudalism in France, was caused by a term he invented called overpopulation. That he said that the food supply had not kept up with the population, and that the French people, there were too many of them, and the food supply hadn't kept up with them. And so as a result of that, you had a mass episode of unrest. And that the problem of capitalism, this problem of overproduction, the tendency of the falling rate of profit, wasn't the problem. The problem was that there are just too many people in the world. This concept of overpopulation. And this is called Malthusianism, the notion that there are just too many people in the world. Overpopulation. And it's bullshit. And why is it bullshit? Because human labor creates all wealth. So if you have more people, those people can go out and create more wealth. Human beings are the source of all the wealth of the world. Human beings are productive laborers. And this idea that, human beings are non-productive consumers, that's not accurate. Human beings are the source of all wealth. So if you have more people, those people can go out and create more wealth. It's not a rational thing, right? The more people you have, the more wealth you can produce because human labor produces wealth. So it's a bullshit concept. Malthusianism, overpopulation. And that, he was saying this, Robert Malthus was talking about overpopulation at a time that the human population was so much smaller. What was the human population at the time that Malthus wrote what he wrote? Human population in 1790. What was it? Right? The world population in 1790. What was the world population in 1790? Population of the world. I'm just pulling it up. 1790. What was it? Trying to find it. Wow, you'd think it'd be easier to find these kinds of things. The global population, I'm seeing a global population map. Right. So the global population, right, around that time, it would have been population in millions. So it would have been around 1750. It was less than 2 billion people in the world. There would have been less than 2 billion people in the world at that point. And they were talking about overpopulation, right? Which is, I mean, right? It would have been a lot less than 2 billion people. Why is this so hard to find, right? World population by year. Let's talk about the rise in the world population, right? World population by year, but how far does it go back, right? Seeing it by the 90s. Oh, here we go. All right. So the world population in 1760 was less than a billion. It was 770 million people, right? So it was less than a billion at that point. And he was talking about overpopulation. Now we have 6 billion people in the world. So his notion that, the global economy just can't handle so many people, it's false, because the more people we get, those people then go out and produce more wealth. It's bad economics. And Karl Marx, in his book Theories of Surplus Value, he goes into great detail about this. The representing people is what Malthus referred to as unproductive consumers. This isn't rational. However, in the capitalist system, where the role of the worker in production is constantly going down, there's less and less room for the worker at the assembly line. The capitalist system has less and less of a role for the worker in production. So the problem is capitalism. The problem is the worker doesn't have a role in production. The capitalist has no use for the worker at the assembly line. That's the problem. But Malthus said the problem was overpopulation. Now, fascist economics, as we understood from Hjalmar Schacht, who was the main economist of Nazi Germany, fascist economics was an attempt to stabilize capitalism with degrowth methods. That is the essence of fascist economics. And I go into great detail about it in my book, right? And one of the sources on this is none other than Lothrop Stoddard. Do folks know who Lothrop Stoddard was? Lothrop Stoddard was a white supremacist who was on the board of Planned Parenthood. When it started, it was called the Birth Control League. And there was a guy named Lothrop Stoddard who was a white supremacist, and he was on the board of Planned Parenthood. And he wrote a book about Nazi Germany. He went to Nazi Germany and he studied their economy. And I will read to you what Lothrop Stoddard wrote about Nazi economics. All right. I'll just pull it up here. All right. Here we go. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Sorry, just trying to find you the quote from Lothrop Stoddard about Nazi economics. Here we go. How did the Nazis actually finance their ambitious projects without currency nor inflation? They did it in a number of ways. Fluid capital was regimented and invested, according to others, or diverted into government loans. Profits were skimmed off by taxation. Above all, and this is the important part, consumption was kept down and living standards were lowered by what was called a process of reverse inflation. The upshot has been that the German people have financed astounding expenditures by literally taking it out of their own hides. That's what Lothrop Stoddard explained. They literally took it out of their own hides. They reduced consumption. When the Nazis came to power in Germany, one of the first things they did was that they threw all the Communist Party leaders in jail and in prison camps. They created a network of prison camps, and they put millions of people into these prison camps. The leaders of the Communist Party and the communist labor unions were thrown into prison camps. And the leaders of the Social Democratic Party and their labor unions were thrown into prison camps. And a lot of people were hired to be guards at these prison camps. And a lot of people were hired to build these prison camps. And then these prison camps functioned as slave labor for corporations, right? Free, various companies, German companies, steel companies, the car manufacturer, the very famous car manufacturing company that's Volkswagen. They had slave labor to do their jobs for them. Right? And that was a stimulus to various corporations. They got slave labor. Plus, they stimulated the economy, hired a bunch of people to be guards, took all kinds of people who had been in the job market, working, competing for jobs, and threw them in prison so they weren't looking for jobs anymore. And that drastically reduced unemployment. Then, on top of that, they launched a campaign against women working. And this is a really big thing, is they launched a campaign saying that if women worked outside the home, they were committing a crime, right? And at that point, they urged women, they had a poster of a woman working in a factory, and it said, this woman is taking a job from a good German man who needs to feed his children. And they forced women out of the workforce, right? They shamed women who worked outside of the workforce. And then they increased the marriage bonus. When you got married, the German government gave you like a marriage bonus, like gave you a bunch of money, right? It gave you like a bonus. So they took women out of the workforce. They sent a huge amount of people into prison camps, and they hired a bunch of people to be prison camp guards. And they then used those prison camp folks as free labor for corporations. And those folks became free labor for corporations. And that was a mechanism of stabilizing the economy. But that's degrowth, right? If you take a section of the population and you turn them into slave laborers, that's not increasing consumption, that's reducing consumption. If you take a whole bunch of productive workers out of the workforce, right? You take women out of working, right? You just take a bunch of workers out of the workforce. You make it so women are not working anymore. That's reducing consumption, right? On top of that, they restarted military spending, right? And I talk about this, that Hjalmar Schacht, who was the Nazi economist, there's a great biography of him, and it's called Hitler's Banker, and it talks about this. It talks about it in great detail, right? All right. 1933, Schacht believed in the rearmament of Germany, and so did Adolf Hitler. Schacht always insisted their reasons were differed radically, but in 1933, their thrust was parallel. To prime the manufacturing of armaments and slice away at unemployment, he founded a small shell corporation, strangely named the Metallurgical Research Company, or MIFO. The purpose of MIFO was to finance large government contracts for armaments. Payments were guaranteed by the Reichsbank. Some of the money came from what had been requisitioned by so-called conversion fund. It was ironic that a portion of German rearmament was paid for by foreign money. During the next 4 years, the value of MIFO bonds grew from the original 1 million marks to 12 billion marks. The MIFO bonds became a very desirable investment. He basically created a military-industrial complex as a way of stabilizing the German economy, spending huge amounts of money on weapons, right? And having people loan money to the German government and get paid back. Bankers loan money to the German government to buy weapons and get paid back. And of course, if you're all of a sudden manufacturing weapons like you weren't before, you're going to suddenly have a boom in your economy. Now, another thing that's worth pointing out, and this is, I quote Lyndon LaRouche on this, when he talks about, right, he says, the two principal bases for the Nazi pseudo-recovery of 1933 and 36 were fixing of wages at the lowest depression levels, fixing of wages, and depletion of previously idled constant capital of German industry. Not only were wages reduced, but their real content was further reduced by the exacerbated inflation, while the intensification of exploitation of labor accelerated. By 1936 and 37, the success of Nazi full employment recovery was obviously moving to the point of crisis. In the means of production, the quality of German labor was being depleted by intensification and lower standards of material culture. Simultaneously, Nazi expansion of production was based on massive issuance of fictitious promissory notes. The Reichsbank and other agencies refinanced this cancerously growing mass to cover the growth of debt service obligations beyond the scale of available products for its payment, and was eminently undermined. The Reichsmark faced the prospect of early national bankruptcy. I mean, you look into this, right? And then he talks about, during World War II, the intensification of auto-cannibalism, primitive accumulation, proceeded along the following general lines. The working conditions of forced foreign guest labor were markedly worsened, and the standard of living in the occupied territories generally lowered to prop up the Reichsmark. Depopulation of large sections of Slavic regions occupied by Nazi administration, emulating the salvaging of used tire carcasses by recapping firms, as part of slave labor systems. Human bodies were squeezed of their accumulated wealth by slave labor conditions of production, and depleted hulks returned to the SS for replacement parts. As a further measure of capitalist economics, the welfare rolls within the concentration camps were successfully reduced by mass extermination and of the aged women, children, depleted slave labor, and other unemployables. So in essence, Nazi economics is about trying to stabilize capitalism by spending lots of money on weapons and bombs and tanks. That's what Tulsi Gabbard said in her interview. And by utilizing slave labor and creating a slave labor underclass. It's degrowth. It's reducing consumption. That is the essence of Biden-omics. And you'll notice that BlackRock, which is a big corporation, a big British finance company, requires companies to essentially reduce their output in order to get financing, right? In order to get loans, it required Sri Lanka to transition to an organic farming system, right? The private bank, BlackRock, said to Sri Lanka, we will finance you, but you have to stop using pesticides. And so they stopped using pesticides, and their crop output dramatically decreased, right? And there's many examples of this, right? They want to replace, for example, coal power plants with solar panels and windmills. Well, what's the problem with that? Is there something wrong with solar panels? No. Is there something wrong with windmills? No, except they don't produce anywhere near as much electricity. And that essentially Biden-omics is about trying to deal with the problems that I talked about earlier, the problems of overproduction, the tendency of the falling rate of profit. It's trying to deal with all of this stuff by reducing consumption, by driving down the amount of energy that is used, reducing energy, reducing living standards, creating a slave labor underclass, spending lots of money on weapons and militarism. All of this is the essence of Biden-omics. It is the ultra rich, the banks, the financiers like BlackRock, like Goldman Sachs, like Chase Bank, the Rockefellers, the Morgans. They are trying to stabilize capitalism with degrowth methods. That is the essence of Biden-omics, and that is fascism. That's what the Nazis did. And in my new book, I talk about that extensively. That is the essence of Biden-omics. It's fascism. Biden-omics is fascism. And Tulsi Gabbard didn't have time to explain that on the show. And I don't know if she's into all of the depth with which I explain that. But in my book, which I did, I was invited on Kim Iverson's show to talk about. I go into great detail about why Biden-omics or wokeism is fascism. Now, the rallying cry of wokeism is anti-racism. And anti-racism has been around for a really long time, right? The communists were organizing, to support black people, to support the Scottsboro Nine. W.E.B. Du Bois, who was a Marxist, was a founder of the NAACP. Black liberation has been in America for a really, really long time. And during the 1960s and 70s, black liberation, you had the Black Panther Party that was, kind of the vanguard of the black liberation struggle. You had various black nationalist groups. There's long been a black liberation movement. But wokeism is very different. Wokeism is privilege politics. Politics that's been fomented at Ivy League universities that basically argues that there is a layer of people in America whose life is too good. Right? There's a layer of people in America who are too comfortable. There's that middle class of America. Their life is too good. They're privileged, and they need to have their privilege taken away. The word privilege is not a good word. Why is the word privilege not a good word? Because a privilege is something that you are not entitled to. And this is really important. A privilege is something you're not entitled to. Right? If let me put it this way. The things that black people face are violations of their rights. Racism and the things that black people face for being black are not them not having privileges. These are violations of their rights. If someone applies for a job and doesn't get it on the basis of their race, they're denied employment, and they face discrimination in employment on the basis of their race, this is called a violation of their rights. You have the right to not be discriminated against. If a police officer shoots you for reaching for your wallet, that is not because you didn't have a privilege. That is a violation of your rights, right? If you live in conditions that are worse, if you lack opportunity on account of your race, that is a violation of your rights. And racism is a violation of the rights of black people. Black people should have equal rights in U.S. society, equal rights to employment, equal rights to treatment, and equal treatment in the courts, but they don't. We know that. There is systemic racism in America. And that is the violation of black people's rights. However, the way wokeism talks about it is it says, no. It's not that black people have their rights violated. Rather, wokeism says that white people have white privilege. And so what is the logical conclusion of this? Right? If one group has an unfair privilege, and that is the basis of systemic racism, not that there is routine violation of the rights of one group, but rather that another group has an unfair privilege, what is the logical conclusion? Obviously, we need to just take this group's unfair privilege away. So essentially, rather than correcting the violation of the rights of black people, we need to bring the white working class down. That is what wokeism argues. And that is essentially what they argue. I mean, they argue that working class white people, because they don't suffer the injustices that black people suffer, which they don't, that instead of raising up the black community, we should focus on shaming, tearing down, and opposing the higher living standards that white workers once enjoyed. And the reality is that, that white working class, that white middle class that used to exist, it's largely gone. The prosperous industrial centers of the country are largely gone. Now, deindustrialization did hit the black community first, right? Detroit got shut down way, way before, the jobs elsewhere. But deindustrialization has already driven down living standards across the United States. Right? And the black community suffered more than anybody. They were the first targets, right? The deindustrialization of the urban centers came before deindustrialization elsewhere. They shut down the jobs in Detroit and the plants in Detroit. and the jobs in urban areas before they shut them down in rural areas. This is a fact, right? The predatory lending crisis hit the black community before it hit the white community. Mass incarceration and criminalization have obviously come down a lot harder on the black community than on white workers. And we saw what happened in New Orleans after the Hurricane Katrina. They went into New Orleans and implemented austerity and degrowth policies drastically, and they got rid of public housing. So the agenda of the rich is to drive down everyone's living standards: white, black, Arab, Asian, Latino. They want to impoverish and reduce consumption on the part of the whole population in order to stabilize their system. They're trying to save capitalism with degrowth. That's the nature of fascism. However, wokeism weaponizes the anger at historic injustices to polarize U.S. society. And that's essentially what's going on, is that they are using the belief that middle America is racist, that middle Americans have white privilege, that the anger at January 6th wasn't motivated by their economic suffering. They're just losing their privilege. That's what was said by Rashida Tlaib, right? Is that that middle America, that they're rioting on January 6th because they're losing their privilege, right? This is the essence of wokeism. Wokeism is about implementing policies of degrowth, reducing energy consumption. The Green New Deal is all about reducing the amount of electricity that the population uses, right? Reducing living standards, reducing consumption, making it harder for people to buy things, having people live on less and less and less. This is that whole thing from Klaus Schwab about you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. This is what they're talking about, right? This is fascist Biden economics. It is an attempt to save capitalism with degrowth methods. And this is complicated stuff, and this isn't stuff that you can answer with a slogan. But the ultra-rich, in order to stay in power, are trying to carry out degrowth economics and reduce consumption and reduce the population and create a slave labor underclass. They're trying to reduce the population and reduce consumption as a way of stabilizing capitalism. And they are using the government to do it. And the reason that I'm very happy that Tulsi Gabbard didn't call it communism is because communism is inherently the opposite of this. Fascism is about keeping capitalism and production organized for profit, but trying to save it by forcibly degrowing. And if you want to read a really good book that explains this, this was written during the Great Depression. It's called Fascism and Social Revolution by R. Palm Dutt. I'll drop the link in the chat. The whole text, the whole book is online if you want to read it. R. Palm Dutt, the British Marxist, he goes into great detail about the economic nature of fascism, right? Go read R. Palm Dutt. He explains it in great depth. And I quote R. Palm Dutt in my new book as well, Where is America Going? Right? That they are trying to save capitalism. They're trying to save the capitalist system with degrowth. And that is the nature of fascism. And this is something Peter Coffin has talked about in his great documentaries about how overpopulation is bullshit. He made a great documentary film that Peter Coffin made called Less Sucks. It was really a great documentary film. I really think people should check it out. And that's the essence of fascist economics. But communism is something completely different. Communism is society taking control of the means of production. The banks and the factories and the industries and the centers of economic power being seized by the working class, by society. And communism then enables growth to continue, no longer restrained by the irrationality of capitalism. Communism says that the capitalist is constantly trying to hire fewer and fewer workers to work at the assembly line. Less and less workers are hired. This leads to this problem of overproduction. And as the worker is outcast and starving, right, the masses of workers, the reserve army of labor, the unemployed, the hungry, the desperately poor, the precariat, right, the increasingly almost semi-permanently unemployed class, the increasingly unemployed, the hungry, the desperate, the working class will band together and take control of the means of production. The banks and the factories and the major industries and the centers of economic power will be seized by the working class. And then they will be operated on a rational central plan so that growth can expand. Communism is all about growth. If you look at the Soviet Union, they were dirt poor. They almost had nothing when the Bolsheviks came to power. By the mid-1930s, they had built the world's largest hydroelectric power plant. They had industrialized the whole place. They'd wiped out illiteracy. You look at China. China used to be the sick man of Asia. Now it's the second largest economy in the world. 800 million people lifted out of poverty. In communist countries, the government has a 5-year economic plan where they plan out how they can increase production. And they organize production according to a central plan, and they raise productivity, and they raise living standards. I've pointed out that in a rational socialist society, self-driving cars would be great because there's less work for everyone to do. All the human labor expended on driving can be expended elsewhere to create more wealth because human labor is no longer necessary for driving. Under capitalism, self-driving cars leads to mass hunger and unemployment because workers who, truck drivers, cab drivers, people who work in traffic courts, all of them are out of a job. But in a socialist society, self-driving cars lead to an even wealthier society because human labor no longer has to be expended on driving. It can be expended elsewhere because it's a rationally planned economy. Socialism is putting rational human planning in control of the means of production in order to increase productivity and raise countries up. That is the nature of socialism. Socialism is overcoming the irrationality of capitalism so that growth is no longer restrained by the irrationality of the market. That is what socialism is. And socialism has nothing to do with Biden-omics and degrowth, right? It has nothing to do with that. Socialism is all about growth. It's about expanding living standards, about increasing consumption, increasing the level of productivity and wealth in society. That is the nature of socialism. Socialist countries are obsessed with creating wealth. And you talk about Vietnam's economic miracle. Lots been written about that. You talk about China and their amazing expansion, poverty alleviation, world's largest hydroelectric power plant, world's largest telecommunications manufacturer. So many people have become millionaires and billionaires in China as living standards have increased. Socialism is not about making everyone poor and equal. Socialism is rather about organizing the economy so growth is no longer restrained by the irrationality of the market. And that is what's very important. Fascism is degrowth. The nature of fascism is degrowth. Whereas the nature of socialism is central planning and the lifting of artificial restraints on growth. And the goal is a society with so much wealth that all inequality can fade away, from each according to his own ability to each according to his needs. That's the goal of socialism, to build a society with so much wealth and so much abundance that the need for a government can go away, from each according to his own ability to each according to his needs. That is the goal of socialism, to create a society with so much wealth and abundance that there's no inequality between people. People can just take what they need and do what they feel like doing. Labor becomes life's prime want and no longer a necessity, meaning people work because they feel like it, to entertain themselves, not out of necessity. And the government fades away and inequality fades away, and people are completely triumphing over nature, right? That the enslaving of human beings to nature is eliminated. This is Marxism, what I'm explaining here. right? This is Marxist economics, is the understanding that the irrationality of capitalism leads to this increased problem of the tendency of the falling rate of profit. And that's Marxism. Now, we at the Center for Political Innovation, we have put forward a 4-point economic plan that would rescue the country from the crisis of capitalism that it's currently facing. Step 1 would be a mass mobilization to rebuild America, to rebuild the roads and the bridges, to build high-speed railway, to build new schools and universities, to just completely revamp the country, hire millions of unemployed people to go out and rebuild America. America is falling apart. While we spend money on bombs and tanks and weapons in other countries, hire millions of unemployed people and put them to work rebuilding America. That's the first step. Second step, how are you going to pay for it? Put natural gas, oil, coal, timber, all of America's natural resources, all the wealth produced by the soil of this country should be public property. And the wealth created by America's natural resources should go into the public budget. No more should oil companies get rich off the oil underneath the ground. No more should natural gas companies be getting rich off of fracking underneath your home. All the natural wealth of America should be used to make America a wealthier country. Public ownership of our natural resources. Third step. The third step would be public control of the lending of money. Let credit, finance, the lending of money be done by the state, right? At a state level, at a federal level, at a local level, have local banks that don't operate for profit, state banks, and a national bank that doesn't operate for profit, lending money strategically in accordance with an overall economic vision to improve the country. We decide that America needs more of a certain type of business, the banks will lend money to people to start those types of businesses. We decide we want to increase home ownership, the banks will lend money to people to go buy their own homes, right? It's about central control of the purse strings of credit. And of course, that would include abolishing the private corporation called the Federal Reserve Bank and having the federal government handle and print money as it says in the U.S. Constitution. That would include eliminating credit card companies, eliminating big, basically putting Wall Street out of business and having the state become the central creditor, a state central bank, abolishing private lending of money. That would be the third step. And the fourth step would then be enacting an economic bill of rights, hiring everyone, declaring people have the right to a job, declaring that people have right to an education, declaring that people have the right to health care. And really, that would be an investment in the population. The way we've been trained to think about things, like a job guarantee, like free college, like free health care, we've been trained to think of these things as a handout, about as like a gift that society is giving to people. No. If you have a population in your country full of people, those folks should be contributing to the economy because human labor is the source of all wealth. So why would you not want to have every person who is able-bodied working in your country, right? So you would obviously want to make sure there was a jobs guarantee so that human labor was being productive and creating wealth. And would you not want the people of your country to be educated, to have the skills they need to do the jobs, to be able to invent things, to be able to make good decisions when they go to vote at the ballot box? So providing education to your population is investing in your population. And of course, if your population is productive, you want them to go be productive, they got to be healthy, right? If they're sick all the time, that's not good either. So you want to invest in having proper health care for your population. And an economic bill of rights is not a handout. It's not a welfare program. It is an investment in the future of the country. So enacting an economic bill of rights would enable productive labor in society to increase. It would enable the population to get smarter. It would enable the population to be healthier and therefore more productive. And we'd be mobilizing the country to rebuild economically. We'd be strategically lending money and assigning credit based on the national interest of the country and an overall economic plan. We would have control over all the wealth created by our natural resources. This would be the first step toward a socialist economy in the United States. Now, that in and of itself, in theory, one could imagine a Norwegian welfare state that did all of these things and wasn't socialism. But in order to beat back the power of all the oil companies and all the banks, in order to mobilize the population and have a government that hired the unemployed and could enact an economic Bill of Rights, you would have to defeat so much capitalist power. The richest of the rich, the oil bankers, would be defeated. Silicon Valley and the tech monopolies would be defeated. At that point, socialism wouldn't be that far off. And that this 4-point economic plan is in the interests, not just of the working class. The working class would benefit the most from this, with their economic Bill of Rights, full employment, rebuilding their communities. But it would also be in the interest of the small business owner. The small business owner wants to have decent roads so people can drive to his business, and drive to his store and buy things. The small business owner wants to have credit assigned to his community so that they can open more small businesses and expand their business operations. The small business owner wants the people in his community to be employed so they can go to his store and buy his products. And the lower levels of capital would benefit from this economic program. The whole nature of the 4-point plan of the Center for Political Innovation is to defeat the power of the ultra-monopolists, of the imperialists. That is the nature of our 4-point economic plan. It targets the oil bankers, the oil monopolists, the natural resources owners, the big corporations. It targets them and it mobilizes the population. And this is a program that could secure the victory of an anti-monopoly coalition. Right? If you read what the Communist Party of the United States historically advocated during the Cold War and elsewhere, they understood that they were not fighting against all capitalism. But in our age, we're fighting against imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism. We're fighting against the rule of the world by big corporations and banks based in Western countries that are holding back development and restraining human creativity and human productivity. Human beings and our wealth and our brilliance, our ability to create, is being restrained by the irrationality of greed and the domination of the global markets by these big corporations. So the big corporations, the ultra monopolies, must be defeated. And in order to do so, we want the working class to align with the small business owner, to align with the farmers, to align with even the lower levels of capital on the basis of rebuilding the economy. The ultra rich and the monopolies are pushing fascism, degrowth economics to save capitalism. The lower levels of capital are in revolt against degrowth because they want to maintain their profits. The working class is also in revolt because it doesn't want to be degrown. It doesn't want to be depopulated. It doesn't want to be impoverished. It doesn't want to be pushed into nothing. There's millions and millions of the overwhelming bulk of U.S. society is suffering right now and is facing a forced degrowth at the hands of the ultra monopolies. So the natural response to this crisis is to build an anti-monopoly coalition to reject fascist economics and degrowth, to connect the United States economically with the center of growth in the world right now, which is China and Russia and the Eurasian explosion, the new alternative economy, the BRICS, the Eurasian Economic Union, the Belt and Road. You look at what's happening. I mean, right now in Russia, they're having a China-Russia forum, and they're talking about all the great investment, I mean, it's amazing what Russia is doing in Africa right now, and China is right there with them. And that there's a huge opportunity for growth in this world if the United States could attach itself to this new emerging economy. All of this lays the basis for a real coalition to be created, an anti-monopoly coalition. And that is why that clip that I started out this stream of Tulsi Gabbard is so important. So I hope you all found that interesting. I've only got one super chat to answer. It came in on the Rockfin. It's from Daniel J. I'll answer it. But why don't we do the roll call? Names and locations, names and locations. I'll call you all out as I see you. Names and locations, names and locations. And then I will start answering your super chat questions. So who is with us tonight? Names and locations, names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Who's with us? Names and locations. Who's with us? Names and locations, names and locations. Who is with us tonight? All righty. Just waiting for the names to start coming through. Right? I see they're coming through elsewhere. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. For some reason, the names aren't coming through. Right? Names aren't coming through. All right. Killian in Milwaukee. Christopher in Texas. Chase in Houston. Crow in California. Peter in Paraguay. Lawrence Johnson in Chicago. Hanson in Ontario. Chris in Salt Lake City. Stephen Ann in North Georgia. David Rennie in Hamilton, Ontario. Sherry Wise in Lorton, Virginia. Harold Hedge in Illinois. Colin in Greensboro. Patch in Arizona. Zeno in Frisia. Bob Troy in New York. David Fox in Bendigo, Australia. Noah in Tampa. Mitchell in Pittsburgh. Mima Flowers in California. Zeno in Frisia. Jamie in St. Paul, the newest member of CPI. San Diego, California. Johnny Bravo. Bob Troy in New York. Mitchell Sparks in Pittsburgh. Sue in Hollywood. Briggy in Pennsylvania. John McCarthy in Chicago. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Public Domain is Under the Radar. Rice in Adelaide, Australia. Kay in New Orleans. Welcome, 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 everybody. So glad to see you. So glad to see you. So glad to see you. Yeah, so glad to see you. Detroit Anthony is with us. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to have you all with us tonight. It's really, really great to have you all with us. Really awesome. Oh, I see on Rumble, we got Tim in St. Louis is with us. Bass Boss 64, Tim in St. Louis. Welcome, Tim. I hope you're enjoying the program. So we got Tim Wanter in Switzerland. We got Ljubljana, Slovenia. There we go. There we go. We got James Lizer in Canada. We got Samuel in Springfield, Massachusetts. Very good. Very, very, very good. Sherry Spector in Cape May. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, everybody. Todd Mead in Alberta, Canada. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to have you all with us here tonight. So really glad to talk to all of you. So yeah, the way the second half of this show works is that I answer super chat questions for the rest of the night. That's the way it works. Now, at this point, we're on 3 different platforms. We're on Rumble. So if you've got a Rumble rant, I will answer your Rumble rant. And we're on Rockfin right now. And so I've already got one tip on Rockfin about the Russia-Africa Summit. That's from Daniel J. And then any super chats that people want to send in, I can answer super chat questions as well. Super chats are always appreciated. Give me something to talk about here in the second half of our show, right? Give me something to talk about. I've got plenty of breath. The night is young, as they say. We got Phil in Miami, Auckland, New Zealand. Welcome, 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 Stephen Clearly. So give me something to talk about in the second half of our show. I tell people that, many people watch this show the next day. Please talk about taxing land value. Thank you, says Noah. All right, I'll talk about that. I see we have a Henry Georgist in the chat. Talk about taxing land value. Very good question. That'll get me talking. Shout out to Proletarian TV for their recent Agent Zelensky documentary with Scott Ritter. All right. Writing it down. Very good. Very, very good. And yes, anything else you want me to talk about in the second half of our show, now would be the time to send me a super chat because I'm getting ready to start answering people's questions. Couple things I did want to mention. One thing is that every morning on the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel, every single morning, we have a morning message from CPI members. Every single morning, we have a morning message. So I would encourage you, to go and subscribe to the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel because every day you can start your day with revolutionary optimism. Every single day. You can start your day with revolutionary optimism. Every single day, we have a different member of the CPI do the morning message. Every single day, we have a separate person do the morning message. Message number 13 will air tomorrow. We're going to try to go as long as we can without having a day without a morning message, right? So many members have stepped up to the plate. Today's message was from John McCarthy. And John McCarthy gave a great message about the Uhuru movement. It was just a great message he gave, an update on the Uhuru movement in their case. And it's a great way to start the day. Lots of revolutionary optimism and hope. But actually, I thought since, we don't have very many super chats to answer yet, keep the super chats rolling in. But why don't we show John McCarthy's message? Because the Uhuru case is so important. It's really, really important. So this is John McCarthy's morning message about the Uhuru movement and the Uhuru case.
Good morning. John McCarthy in Chicago. I joined CPI about 1 year ago when Caleb organized the Unite Against the Imperialists conference here. That's the one that they tried so very hard to prevent from happening, but they couldn't. If you watch enough of Caleb's streams, you probably hear him refer to me all the time as the Uhuru guy. And I should protest because for most of my 50-something years, I've been involved in political fights. So I've been involved in countless campaigns, organizations, causes. For him to reduce it all to just one single thing, I really should protest and I really should object. But of course, I'm going to spend the rest of my time this morning talking about the Uhuru 3 case. Not just because it's the most important fight going on inside the United States right now, but also because they just filed last week this amazing brief. It's the first of 3. Each of the defendants is going to have one filed on their behalf. This one was filed on behalf of Penny Hess by her lawyer, Leonard Goodman, who is also from Chicago, a great fighter for civil rights and for the First Amendment. And what he wrote is amazing because it's not just a legal brief, but it is a political document, an organizing document. And it starts out by going through the history and the beliefs of the African People's Socialist Party. And then it talks about all the places that Chairman Omali Yeshitela has traveled to promote this cause. Because, yes, it's absolutely true that he went to Russia and gave 2 speeches to a NGO, a non-governmental organization. But it's the exact same speech that he gave in Nicaragua, in South Africa, in Spain, in Paris, in Berlin, in Ireland, and in Oxford University, England, right? The same exact speech he's been giving for decades, and that is speaking about how the descendants of Africa who have been forcibly dispersed against their will all around the earth are part of one nation, and that they are owed reparations by the United States and by the European powers. Now, you might agree with that, you might disagree with it, but he has a right to believe that. He has a right to organize around that, and he has the right to go anywhere in the world to speak on that, because the plight of Africans in America, the whole world is concerned with that. The whole world is following that. And this document then goes into the whole history of rulings around the First Amendment and free speech in the United States. It cites like about 20-something, at least, different cases, right, where the government has challenged free speech and has been struck down by the courts and by the Supreme Court. So I wanted to read just one part of it. If you want to hear the whole thing read, at last Sunday's meeting, O'Malley speaks, or I forget exactly what they call O'Malley teaches. It's on the Burning Spear TV YouTube channel. They read the whole entire thing. You can also go to their website and download it, the text of it, like I did. But I'm going to read this part here. This case is about pure political speech and the right to advocate dissenting views. The overt acts charged in the indictment all relate to political speech and peaceable assembly. The African People's Socialist Party defendants are accused of speaking at conferences, peaceable rallies, and multi-city speaking tours. They are accused of publishing articles in their own newspaper, including an article written by a foreign national. Most of the charged conduct targets the public criticism of official U.S. policy with respect to Russia and Ukraine. The indictment attempts to criminalize speeches in which defendants criticize NATO expansion eastward to Russia's border. The 2014 U.S.-backed coup to remove Ukraine's Russia-friendly president and replace him with a U.S. European Union puppet regime, and U.S. policy to arm Ukraine to the teeth. Defendants are alleged to have committed additional crimes by making speeches blaming the United States for provoking Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Every one of these charged offenses are protected political speech under the First Amendment. Our form of government is built on the premise that every citizen shall have the right to engage in political expression and association. This right was enshrined in the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights. And then it goes on to cite a bunch of different rulings on that. I'm going to skip to the end of that section. In summary, the government here is using Section 951 to prosecute members of an activist group for political speech and activism in opposition to U.S. foreign policy. In so doing, this prosecution strikes at the heart of the First Amendment. There's 29 pages. There's a lot more in there. You should either go to Burning Spear TV, the YouTube channel, and listen to it read, or you should go to handsoffuhuru.org and download the PDF and read the whole thing. But what they've done here is turn the indictment of their movement around and make it an indictment of the U.S. government, which is what needs to happen. Now, I read that part in particular because what it's showing, what that part shows, is that not only is this an attack on the First Amendment, but in particular, it's an attack on people speaking out against this proxy war that the United States is waging against Russia. And that is why the Center for Political Innovation takes this so seriously, because yes, this case is about defending the right to organize. It's about defending the idea of reparations, defending free speech. But the thing is, in particular, what it's about is defending the right to try to stop this war. And this war is very, very close to becoming not a proxy war, but a nuclear war. And that will destroy all higher life on this planet. So there's a certain urgency behind this, right? We're not just fighting for our right to express our opinion, right? We're fighting for our right not to have our flesh melted off our skeletons. We're fighting for the right to not hand this planet over to the cockroaches. This war has to be stopped. First Amendment is always important, but right now it is particularly important for the reason that they are being targeted, and that is to stop this war. This war has to be stopped. And we at CPI are 1,000% committed to using our free speech rights to stop this war. We were endorsers of Rage Against the War Machine, and there is another rally, smaller but important. It's the start of something coming up on August 6th, the anniversary of the Hiroshima bombing. We're saying no more Hiroshimas, no more Nagasaki's, no global Hiroshima, because that's really what we're facing if the Biden administration keeps going down this path. So there's a main rally in New York City. We are sponsoring it, co-sponsoring it in coalition with some libertarians, with Nick Grana's People's Party, with the Schiller Institute, and with many, many, many other organizations. And we have to keep building. We have to let people know that Russia and China are not our enemy, that Wall Street and the neocons are, and we have to get people to fight to stop this insanity. And that's what we're doing. That's what we plan to do, and we're going to win.
That is a great message from John. Thank you very much, John. And anybody, I encourage you to go to the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel. We have great messages every morning. Now, I have 3 super chats I can answer on here, and I have 1 super chat that came in on the Rockfin. But I do want to remind people that, you are watching this right now. So you have the ability to make this conversation go however you want. You can ask me about whatever's on your mind. You can get me to react to something. You can, and so I want you to use that, right? Tell me what it is you want me to talk about. Point me in a direction you want me to point. Get me talking about what is on your mind. So I've got a couple other clips I want to play because, we have been raising the Uhuru case at every opportunity. Hands off Uhuru has been a big aspect of what the Center for Political Innovation has been dedicated to. So I wanted to actually show when we raised the Uhuru case on May 27th. We had a rally in Union Square. We ended up marching up to the bigger rally that was taking place at the United Nations. But we raised, and thank you, John. Thank you. Well, thank you for that great message. Thank you very much. But I wanted to show you when we raised the Uhuru case at our rally that we had in Union Square. So this is when we raised the Uhuru case at the UN.
So I don't know if people are aware, but this sign refers to the Uhuru movement. These are 4 African-American activists from the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement. They are facing 10 years in prison, charged with being Russian agents. All they did was speak up. All they did was have some Zoom calls. And the American government wants to throw them in prison for 10 years for speaking up, for exercising free speech. And all kinds of civil liberties voices have spoken up and said that what's going on, the charging by the U.S. Department of Justice, the criminal case against the Uhuru movement is a huge attack on freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. If they can charge them just for having some Zoom calls and, writing some articles about Ukraine, if they can make that a criminal offense, they can come for you. They can shut down our civil liberties. So we're saying hands off Uhuru. Drop the charges. Hands off Uhuru. Drop the charges. Hands off Uhuru. Drop the charges. Hands off Uhuru. Drop the charges.
So yeah, that was us raising that when we were in the streets on May 27th. As people continue to think about what they want me to talk about here in the second half of our show, I wanted to talk about a couple other things that just came to mind when I thought about John's message. So for those of you who are not aware, and John did mention it, we are supporting the Center for Political Innovation is an official endorser of this day of action that is taking place. All over the country, there are going to be protests on August 6th. August 6th is the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima. The nuclear bomb, the first use of atomic weapons, nuclear weapons in world history. And so there's going to be a very important demonstration that happens at the United Nations. And it's endorsed by the People's Party. It's endorsed by the Schiller Institute, the Libertarian Party, Rage Against the War Machine, Liberty Speaks, the Party of Communists, PCUSA. They're endorsing it. It's going to be a very, very important demonstration that is happening at the United Nations on August 6th. It's very important. And you can see our logo is there on the poster, right? The Center for Political Innovation logo is right there in the bottom corner there. And we're endorsing it. It's going to be great. I intend to be there. In New York City, the rally is going to be in front of the United Nations, Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza. And that'll be at 1 p.m. on August 6th. And then there's going to be a rally in Chicago. There's going to be a rally in Portland. There's going to be rallies in California. There's going to be rallies all over the country. And our members are heavily involved in different cities that will be involved in these rallies. And it's important. We're trying to build a movement, right? This online stuff is a big distraction. It's all a big distraction, and it's a dead end. Right? There's so many of these streamers they don't want to build a movement. They just want to get on the internet and talk smack and exercise and, cuss people out. And, the only thing that is going to save our country and save the world from the crisis that's facing us right now is going to be some kind of mass movement. We urgently need a mass movement in the United States right now. There is no substitute for it. We need people to be organizing. We need people to be in the streets. And we also need people doing outreach. We need to find a way to approach people. And that's one thing we're talking about in the Center for Political Innovation. We have our weekly Zoom call every week with our whole organization. Every member gets an email. If you're a member of the CPI, you probably got it a few minutes ago or maybe an hour ago. You got your invitation to our weekly Zoom meeting to discuss what's happening. Absolutely. And if you are a member of the Center for Political Innovation, we're going to be talking about how we can get involved and how we can intervene in this upcoming important day of action. But the date is August 6th. And what's interesting is, John pointed out to me that August 6th last year was the day that we had our Chicago conference. And, that conference in Chicago that we had last year ended up being pretty gosh darn historic. And I see there's another super chat that came in through the Rockfin. Would the socialist U.S. be structurally different? All right. Very good. Putting that down, Daniel J. And I also put down the question from Matthew James about Yemen. You're both on the list, so very good. Second half of the show is coming together, so very good. But But yeah, August 6th was the day of our conference in Chicago. And that conference in Chicago was very important. And we actually began it with a moment of silence and remembrance of those who died at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because we realized August 6th was the date that happened. And so we couldn't not talk about that at our conference. So we began with a moment of silence. But that conference was historic for a couple reasons. First of all, the raid on the Uhuru movement, the raid on their homes, had happened just a few days prior. I'd heard that the Uhuru movement, the African People's Socialist Party, had their homes raided. So we called them immediately and offered our support. I was getting calls all day about what was happening to the Uhuru movement. And we called them in St. Louis. We said, we're having this event in Chicago. We want to support you. And they sent their people out. And it was a big moment, that we honored the Uhuru movement. But Tara Reid, the woman who was sexually assaulted by Joe Biden, she also was a guest speaker at the conference. We gave her an award for her anti-imperialist work and for speaking the truth. But what was amazing is that she met the Uhuru movement. She had not heard about the Uhuru case, but she met them at our conference. She met the Uhuru movement. And Tara Reid went on to become a producer for Kim Iverson. And so Kim Iverson ended up featuring the Uhuru movement on her program, on her show, which was really great. And eventually Tucker Carlson talked about them. And Tucker Carlson has interviewed Tara Reid before. So it looks like by having that conference the way we did, by introducing Tara Reid to the Uhuru movement, and Tara Reid then introducing them to Kim Iverson and introducing them to Tucker Carlson, it looks like we had a very big impact with our little conference that we had. It wasn't that many people there, maybe 70, 75 people at our conference. It wasn't huge. It wasn't a huge conference. We did the red berets. We had our red berets on. But, that was a really big deal. And it was a particularly stressful time for me because of the fact that, they were blackmailing me. And I called somebody on the phone. I heard they were planning to come after me with some bullshit. And I actually called one of the people involved, one of the wreckers, on the phone. His name, it was the ringleader. And I called him on the phone and I said to him, what's the deal? And I basically said to him, that what's being implied here is not true. I didn't, get into specifics. And he said to me, well, I guess you're going to have to cancel the conference, aren't you? And I said, no, I'm not going to cancel the conference. I'm not canceling the conference. It never even occurred to me to cancel the conference. He's like, you're going to cancel the conference, right? And I'm like, no. And he said it again, twice on the phone. Well, you really ought to cancel the conference. I said, I'm not going to cancel the conference. And I said, but you know that what you're implying here is not true, right? And he said, get specific. Come on, get specific with me. And at that point, I figured he was probably recording the conversation. And I wasn't going to get into specific details. And I said, basically, what I had heard through the grapevine that they were trying to imply I was doing was not true. And he knew that. And he said, well, get specific. And I said, well, I'm not going to get specific. And I hung up on him at that point. But it had never even occurred to me to cancel the conference. But the fact that he went there, you're going to cancel the conference, right? You're going to cancel the conference. The fact that there was a mysterious phone call made to Tara Reid to try and put pressure on her to not participate in the conference. Her phone number was handed to somebody, and like this insane phone call in the middle of the night went to Tara Reid to try and pressure her to drop out of the conference. She didn't do that, right? They really wanted to cancel this conference. They didn't want us to give a platform to Uhuru. And they also, they didn't want us to give a platform to Tara Reid. And John McCarthy is right. He's pointing out that's also how Garland Nixon heard about the Uhuru movement. And Garland Nixon, Garland Nixon had covered it on his show, but we were on the phone. I was on his radio show the day the raids happened. And I talked to Garland Nixon about it. He met them at the conference for the first time. Garland Nixon was there. He was great. And, I talked to Garland Nixon, and I had to talk to everybody at the conference about, all the speakers, at least. I had to sit down with them and say, look, this is what they've got. We're trying to figure out how much they're going to lie, how many lies, how they're going to try to distort this. But basically, this is what they've got on me. And immediately, multiple people told me, this is coming from higher places. This is bullshit. This is bullshit, Caleb. They're trying, and I knew that this was, and I expected it to come out during the conference. I was basically told by people that they intended it to come out during the conference. So I deleted Twitter from my phone. I deleted Facebook from my phone, and I took people aside and I said, if shit drops during the conference, pretend you didn't see it. We have to the show must go on. And we're not going to disrupt the conference with this thing dropping. So I don't want to hear it during the conference. We'll deal with it after the conference. The show must go on. So we did the conference, and I didn't look at my phone, and I was quite on edge. I mean, if you watch the speech I gave at the conference, I was quite on edge about the whole thing because, I mean, they've got, stupid sexual blackmail material they're going to try to use against me, and I expected it to drop during the conference. Didn't drop. Right. But, I just told people, just pretend you didn't see it. Don't acknowledge it. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. And we white knuckled it through the conference. That's what we did. We white knuckled it through the conference. We did the conference. Everything went well. I gave a passionate talk. I kind of turned the anxiety I was feeling about everything into passion. Plus, I was able to kind of orient people about what was going on, the threats that were being made against me. And there were a number of people they tried to recruit to get involved and couldn't get them involved. So we did the conference anyway. It's really wild to think it's been almost a year since that Chicago conference. But what's wild is that the Uhuru movement, they got indicted. But then Tara Reade, she highlighted their case. And now Tara Reade has been forced into exile. Tara Reade has been forced out of the country, right? If she comes back to America, she'll be arrested. Right? She'll be arrested, right? So you want to talk about a conference that was important, right? We platformed the Uhuru movement. We made very important connections for the Uhuru movement, number one. Number two, we gave an award to Tara Reade, right? And Tara Reade is so important, so much of a threat to the Biden administration. She's been forced into exile. And here, this takes the cake. One of the speakers was Nick Brana of the People's Party, right? Nick Brana came all the way. He flew all the way to Chicago from D.C. He spoke at our conference. Gave a great presentation. He talked about all kinds of things, bioweapons and anti-China hysteria. Great talk. And then later, we understand that we inspired Nick Brana to do the Rage Against the War Machine rally, that he saw that we were organizing. He saw that the Schiller Institute wanted to work with us. He saw that the Party of Communists wanted to work with us. And he got the idea to do the Rage Against the War Machine partially from what he saw at our conference. And Tara Reade spoke at the Rage Against the War Machine rally. So you look at this little conference we had in Deerfield, which is a suburb of Chicago. It's like a suburb. It's about an hour out of Chicago. At this little hotel, we had a conference at a hotel in Deerfield near Chicago. This was a historic conference. Going to that conference, if you were in that room, that would be like, that was like, I don't know, that would be like going to an event, in 1968 where the Black Panthers were there and, the Weather Underground were there and, Martin Luther King Jr. were there. I mean, it was like you were in the middle of big events. The Rage Against the War Machine developed out of that conference. The Uhuru movement getting national attention for their case developed out of that conference. Tara Reade, the victim of Joe Biden, was forced into exile, right? She was there speaking at that conference. You want to talk about an organization that is in the center of the struggle. That's us, right? A black group of black revolutionaries get their homes raided by the FBI. Where are they? A week later, they're speaking at the CPI conference. A woman who has been sexually assaulted by the president of the United States is refusing to back down. Russia is supporting her, and the American government's going after her. Where is she? She's speaking at our conference. The leader of the People's Party, a third party started by Cornel West and others, their official chairman, Nick Brana, he's speaking at the conference, and then he gets the idea to organize the Rage Against the War Machine rally. That conference that we organized, August 6th, 2022, was pivotal in everything that has gone on over this year, right? As the war in Ukraine has escalated, and that conference was a really big deal. And the enemy knew it was a big deal. Satan knew it was a big deal and called me. I mean, I called Satan on the phone, and Satan tried to convince me to cancel the conference. That's how desperate they were to cancel the conference, right? And now I know why they, very good, John, very good. That conference is a really big deal. John McCarthy joined the Center for Political Innovation at that conference. Did you know that? He actually became a dues-paying member at that conference. Other people joined at that conference, right, in Chicago. That conference was historic, all right? That conference was a really big deal. So before I start answering people's Super Chat questions, we got a few I can answer. Before I answer that, I am going to show you the opening of the CPI conference. I'm going to show it to you. Yeah, Timoshenko was there, right? I mean, if you were at that conference, you were in the center of world history, right? You were in the center of world history if you were at that conference. Everyone who was at that conference should be bragging. You should brag to your grandkids that you were at that conference, right? You were in the middle of the struggle. Years from now, people are going to ask, when Tara Reade got forced out of the country, what did you do? And you're going to say, I was in Chicago and I met Tara Reade and I was applauding for her and we were all chanting, we believe Tara, we believe Tara. You're going to tell your kids you were there. Years from now, when they talk about how this black revolutionary group got indicted and they tried to throw them in prison for being revolutionaries, and they had their homes raided, where you can say to them, oh, well, a week later, I was at a conference where we were supporting them and chanting, hands off Uhuru, no more raids, right? If you say the Rage Against the War Machine rally, this huge anti-war rally that happened in Washington, D.C., you can say, well, I wasn't just at the rally. I was at the conference where Nick Brana got the idea to put on the Rage Against the War Machine rally. I mean, you were in the center of the struggle. Newsweek magazine covered our conference. 70 people meet at a hotel in the suburbs of Chicago. Newsweek magazine did a story about our conference, right? We were in the crosshairs of the deep state. If you wonder why our organization has been subjected to so much smearing and demonization, why they've targeted me on a personal level, why they've tried to call us a cult, look at everything that came out of that conference, right? And all the people that have joined the smears, you can not like me all you want. You don't like my personality. You don't like how I talk about facts and I'm bookish and I'm not like cool and normal or whatever. You forced an organization to temporarily shut down. We had to close down for 3 months. An organization that hosted and honored Tara Reade, that connected Tara Reade with the Uhuru movement, an organization that helped spawn the Rage Against the War Machine rally. We continue to get shit done. We were a sponsor of Rage Against the War Machine. We just had the Summit Against Hypocrisy in Washington, D.C. We just had a great event. We're about to sponsor this great rally, Humanity for Peace. All these records. You can not like me. No one says you have to like me, but it was about hurting a lot more than me. Because that conference, the fact that Newsweek covered it, the fact that we connected Tara Reade with the Uhuru movement, the fact that Tara Reade's been forced into exile, the Uhuru movement has been indicted, Nick Brana got the idea for the Rage Against the War Machine rally. We were at the center of the struggle because we need a movement. We need a movement. Let me repeat this. We need a movement. I'm really glad y'all are watching me right now. I appreciate you watching me streaming, but this isn't going to save us from the crisis. We need a movement, and CPI is building a movement. We need you. We need you to join the Center for Political Innovation. We need you to help us recruit people and build this movement. We are building a movement. We are building a movement. That's what we're doing. We are building a movement. We are building a movement. We are building a movement. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Thank you. F the wreckers. Thank you, David. Thank you. And we are building a movement. And we may be small in number, but I mean, we're not a vanguard party formation, but we're playing as close to that role as you could. We are at the center of a real, now there's a real coalition forming with the Libertarian Party, with the People's Party, with the Schiller Institute, with the Party of Communists. Like, there's a real coalition forming. So I'm going to put on the opening of the Chicago conference. I'm going to put that on, and then I'll start answering super chats. But I just want you to understand how important what we're doing. All these people, they watch Danny Haiphong, and they think it's really, really great how much he hates white Americans and how edgy he is and hating American workers and calling Trumpers Nazis. He's never done anything like what we have done. A lot of people watch Jackson Hinkle, right? And they think he's really great, and he's pro-Russia, and he's debating people. He's never done anything like what we have done. Like, we're making shit happen. And that is why the government has targeted us, right? That is why they have smeared me. That's why they've tried to destroy my reputation. That's why they've tried to destroy our organization. They don't even want people to know we're still in business. They don't want people to know we're still functioning. But anyway, I got a lot more to say about that. But I'm going to put on the video of the Chicago conference. I'm going to put that on because I want you to see August 6th last year was a historic day. We changed history. This conference that we did, this was a big historical moment. If you were there, you were in the middle of the struggle. You were at the heart of anti-imperialism. The government saw this conference and fumed with rage that they couldn't stop it. They attacked it in Newsweek. This conference was a really big deal.
And we'd like to start things off today with a moment of silence on the 77th anniversary of the U.S. bombing of Hiroshima. Please stand and we'll have a moment of silence. Thank you. And we start out our events at CPI with our Pledge of Unity, which you can find in your conference folders. The Pledge of Unity was adapted from the Pledge of the World Federation of Democratic Youth, an organization formed after World War II for international solidarity. So if you'd please stand and raise your right hand and repeat after me in the pledge. If this will open for me. We pledge that we shall remember this unity forged at the end of the Second World War, not only today, not only this week, this year, but always. Until we have built the world we have dreamed of and fought for. We pledge ourselves to build the unity of the people of the world. All races, all colors, all nationalities, all beliefs. To eliminate all traces of fascism from the earth. To build a deep and sincere international friendship. Among the people of the world. To keep a just, lasting peace. To eliminate want, frustration, and enforced idleness. We have come to confirm the unity of all people. To salute our comrades who have died. And and pledge our word that skillful hands, keen brains and bold enthusiasm, shall never more be wasted in war. Now let's please remain standing for the Internationale, followed by the Star-Spangled Banner. Now I'm pleased to introduce the...
So, we will not surrender. Here we are. You know what I mean? After that, all hell and high water came down on our organization. They tried to crush us. They just went viciously after us. And here we are. And Peter Coffin just made an amazing documentary about our last conference. We had a big event in New York City. We had a reception after the Rage Against the War Machine rally. We are still here. And I got to tell you that ritual is so important. Ritual, the fact that we did the flag ceremony the way we did, right? We did that flag ceremony. That's really important, right? The pledge and the flag ceremony. This stuff is important because this is what holds people together as an organization. You have to have ceremony. You have to have ritual. You have to have something more than just people getting up and talking at each other in speeches. You have to show that you're militarized. You have to show that you're disciplined, right? This is what holds groups together, is traditions like this, right? And that scares the ruling class. They know that. And that's why it drives the wreckers crazy, right? We're doing what real political parties and real forces do around the world is they organize, they wear uniforms, they put on events, they march. We're doing something really, really special with the Center for Political Innovation. And we're not going to surrender. We are not going to surrender. And the fact that our conference last year turned out to be such a big deal, right, in the development of events over the past year, this shows how important we are as an organization. And we're not going to surrender, and we're not going to give this up, right? We're not going to give this up. We're going to keep going. We are going to keep going, and we're not going to surrender. So shout out to everyone who was there in Chicago, and shout out to everyone who has kept our organization alive over the past year. We are marching forward as an organization. We are marching forward. We will not surrender. We will not surrender, and we will keep marching ahead. So on that note, folks, now I am going to start answering super chat questions. If you're on Rumble, and I'm still taking them, right? If you got more stuff you want me to talk about, look, my wife is out of town. I'm here, and, I'm just, hey, the night is young. It's just a little bit after 1 a.m., just keep me talking, right? Keep me talking. You've asked me some good questions so far. So I'm going to start answering your questions. But if you want to send me a super chat or a Rumble rant or a tip on Rockfin, by all means do so. I'm going to start answering questions. I'm going to start answering your questions. So the first question I've got was a Rockfin tip. Daniel J asked me, the Russia-Africa summit looks like an anti-imperialist summit. Libya requested Russia's assistance, withdrawing foreign troops from its country. Is Libya on the path to reclaim what NATO destroyed? I certainly hope so. And thank you, John. I'll answer your question. But I certainly hope so. And the reason it was an anti-imperialist summit is because imperialism is about holding back economic development, right? Imperialism is about keeping the world poor so that Wall Street and London can stay rich. That is what imperialism is about. And it definitely was an anti-imperialist summit because it was about development. And it was about emphasizing. They had a beautiful display of all the Soviet posters supporting African liberation. They highlighted Africa's support, or Russia's support for Nelson Mandela, Russia's support for various national liberation movements on the African continent, the role of the Soviet Union in supporting African liberation struggles. They emphasized independent development. Russia announced, by the way, that all the countries that have lost out on fertilizer, Russia is going to supply them the grain and fertilizer they're missing at zero cost, free of charge, right? So Russia is this idea that Russia's starving African countries or something. That's not the case, right? The imperialists wrecked the Black Sea grain deal, and most of the grain under the Black Sea grain deal wasn't going to Africa. It was going to Spain. It was going to European countries. So, they wrecked the Black Sea grain deal. They're blaming Russia for it, when in reality, Russia is now giving African countries the grain and fertilizer free of charge. And the idea that Russia could help Libya establish its national liberation, that'd be great. It'd be great if Libya could move in an anti-imperialist direction. What's been done to Libya is absolutely horrendous. So there we go. So now the next question I've got, it's please talk about taxing land value, right? Well, that's Henry George. Henry George was an economist, kind of a socialistic economist, who argued that land is the basis of all wealth. It's the basis of natural resources. It's the basis of rent. And that the government, taxing people on the basis of their land value could be the basis for creating a much more equitable social system. That's what was argued by Henry George. And Henry George was not a full socialist, but he argued that taxing the land values could be the basis of creating a more egalitarian social order. And he was against the big landowners. He was against the mining corporations. And he saw that as a method for making life more livable. That was Henry George, the great leftist economist. And I mean, it's a great demand. It's not full socialism yet, but it's a great demand. I would be for taxing land values. I don't see anything wrong with that. Interestingly, Henry George ran for mayor of New York City. And his campaign was kind of the center of working class resistance. Karl Marx and his supporters endorsed Henry George when he ran for mayor of New York City. And actually, Daniel DeLeon, who became like a pivotal figure in the history of American socialism, Daniel DeLeon was fired from being a professor at Columbia University because he endorsed Henry George when he ran for mayor of New York City and campaigned for him. And Henry George's ideas also laid the basis for the Liberal Democratic Party of Britain. And in fact, the anthem of Henry George's supporters, the land, God gave to us the land, the ground on which we stand. Why should we be beggars with a ballot in our hand? God gave the land to the people. You know, that song is still used by the Liberal Democratic Party of Britain as their anthem, even though they don't advocate taxing land values anymore. That they trace their heritage back to Henry George's economic program. So I think that's pretty interesting. So yeah, that's my answer to that question. Next question is from Hanson Winks, and he gives a shout out to Proletarian TV, which is a great YouTube channel. That's the YouTube channel of the Communist Party of Great Britain Marxist-Leninist, the CPGBML, aka the Communists. That's Jyoti Brar and Harpal Brar, our great friends who we do a regular podcast with. They're awesome. They are genuine revolutionary anti-imperialists. They are great comrades, our British comrades. Jyoti Brar started the World Anti-Imperialist Platform. And Hanson Wicks is highlighting the fact that they have shown the documentary Agent Zelensky that was just created by Scott Ritter. And that I have not yet had a chance to watch it. But it is a great documentary, I understand, that goes into the history of Zelensky and how he is controlled by British intelligence. It has a lot of information in it about Zelensky and how they manage him and control him. And I don't know if people saw the new reports from Seymour Hersh and others that it appears that, Zelensky, that he has blackmail on Joe Biden. And that's why, Biden is just going along with him. And that the American intelligence community is furious because it appears that that Zelensky has just basically been given a free hand to do whatever he wants, and that it's important. So there we go. Yeah, I mean that's a great question. Do you think Zelensky has a drug problem? The idea that Zelensky uses cocaine has been widely speculated about since this war began. Now, I don't have any way of knowing that, but it is certainly possible, right? And that, he's a comedian. Comedians, Robin Williams struggled with cocaine addiction many years because comedians, they have to, keep their energy going, right? I've never used cocaine, but I'm addicted to unnamed diet beverage. I mean, I can't go without my Diet Coke because it's an upper, right? And if you're the kind of person who likes to talk, if you like to entertain people, if you have ideas, you're a creative person, those kind of substances are very dangerous. They're very dangerous because they stimulate your personality, right? If you have an outgoing personality, cocaine and uppers are very dangerous. That's why I will not touch energy drinks, right? I was warned years ago by a doctor. He said, your personality, the way you're addicted to Diet Coke, try to, don't, scale back the Diet Coke a little bit, but stay the hell away from Red Bull. Stay the hell away from energy drinks because your personality, you would go crazy with energy drinks. And he was right? And I'm totally addicted to Diet Coke. And honestly, I am not a defender of my Diet Coke, right? I'm not a defender of it. I know that Diet Coke, is very bad for you. I mean, it is. It's not a healthy substance. And that Diet Coke, we may find out in a few years that it could be worse than cigarettes, right? But it is my addiction. And, getting myself unaddicted to Diet Coke could be very dangerous. And that Donald Trump, who is an old man who's quite productive and is in quite good shape, is also addicted to Diet Coke. So that gives me reassurance. But, we know about Hunter Biden and his problem with cocaine. So is it possible that Zelensky has a cocaine addiction as well? I don't know, right? It is clear that Zelensky is pilfering off a huge amount of the money, right? A huge amount of the money that has been used, for this war, and it's organized crime and corruption. The intelligence community is referring to Ukraine as being like the most corrupt country, outside of Nigeria. I mean, the amount of theft that's going on now. They want to pretend corruption's not an issue in Ukraine. It clearly is. Clearly is. And I got your super chat, and we'll get to that. You're on the list. You're on the list. All right. And John thanks me. Thank you, John. We appreciate it. Your great message. And tune in tomorrow morning. There's a great message from another friend. I always want it to be a surprise who the message is from, but a great friend of our show, a great CPI member, has a message tomorrow. You're going to love it. You are absolutely going to love it. So be sure to watch the message. Watch the CPI morning messages every day. Watch them every day. I am dead serious. You want to watch the CPI morning messages every day. Set the tone of your day with revolutionary optimism. Right? This community, right? We are providing people with a sense of purpose. We're giving people meaning. We're helping people struggle for truth and justice. So I would encourage you, just start your day tomorrow, right? It airs at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Wake up tomorrow with the CPI morning message, right? It's from a great friend of ours. He's going to talk about his experiences in our organization. I would start out your day with the CPI morning message, right? There's the link, right? Start it out. We've had so many great messages so far. Noah and Gavin and Elizabeth and Lori Spencer and Tyler and, so many people have done so many great messages. Killian did a great message, read a poem. And, there's just been so many, Simon Miller did a great message, and we've had great messages every morning. So another great message from yet another new member, or another member, right? It's going to be great. So please, I urge you to start your day. Wake up in the morning. When you wake up and you drink your morning coffee, watch the CPI morning messages. And if you're a CPI member, make a morning message, right? We're doing one every single day. So we need as many messages as we possibly can, and we're not going to censor you. There might occasionally be something that we ask someone to adjust or something, but it's about giving people an opportunity to be themselves, letting the organization. Tom Mitchlack, yes, Tom did a great one as well. I don't want to forget Tom. So many people. We're about to have message 13. Yes, David, of course we want you to drop a message. Absolutely, please drop a message. Yes, absolutely. Drop a message, David. Anytime, please. Just send me the video and drop a message. Any CPI member or CPI friend or ally. We have been talking to some of our more famous friends. Lori Spencer, she has a radio show. She's not a member of CPI. She did a great message for us, right? And I think, David, you are, even though you're in Australia. I think you are a dues-paying member of CPI. You're, of course, welcome to do it. Please do a message, David. Please do. Cornell on West and I align almost everything except Iran. Any issues you disagree with him on, I will definitely answer that. And you are on the list. You are on the list. So Matthew James is asking about the war in Yemen. Well, China is doing its best to resolve it. At this point, Saudi Arabia and Iran are no longer at loggerheads. They have established diplomatic relations, and things are improving between them. However, there is still fighting going on the battlefield, right? There are different factions in Yemen. You have to remember that both sides in Yemen are coalitions, right? You have the Houthis and Ansarullah that are the bulk of the fighting force, but they are not the only ones, right? You have the Southern Movement that is aligned with the Houthis. Those are communists, people that want to restore the Democratic People's Republic of Yemen, right? They're Marxists, 21st century socialists, right? You also have, different Arab nationalist parties that are aligned with the Houthis. But then on top of that, you have against the Houthis, right? You have the pro-Saudi forces, the forces that are supporting Mansour Hadi. You also have Al-Qaeda and Wahhabi religious fanatics. And that the war in Yemen, the reason they can't just solve it is it's not like that Iran, the way American media has portrayed the war in Yemen, the way American media wants to talk about it is they tell you, Saudi Arabia is supporting the Yemeni people in fighting against Iran. Well, that's bullshit. Now, Iran is sympathetic to the Houthi movement because the Houthi movement are Shia Muslims. They admire the Islamic revolutionary tradition. They say prayers for Khomeini, but they have a different form of Shia Islam. They're Zaidi Shia. They're not 12er Shia. They don't recognize 12 imams after Muhammad. And on top of that, the Houthi movement, Ansar Allah is its own thing, right? They believe every man must have a firearm. They have unique beliefs, right? They're mountainous people. They're the people in the northern part of Yemen. They're mountainous. They're deeply religious, and they're traditional, right? And it's mountain people. They're mountain people. They are deeply religious mountain people, basically, who have, they're a religious minority in Yemen. The population of Yemen does not agree with them. Most of the population of Yemen are Sunni Muslims. And southern Yemen is very secular. They don't want a religious government in southern Yemen, right? Southern Yemen used to be a communist government, the Democratic People's Republic of Yemen, the DPRY. It's a communist government no one talks about. But South Yemen used to be a communist government, right? Well, there's something in Yemen called the Southern Movement that is the remnants of the communist government. And they want to reestablish the DPRY. And they're aligned with the Houthis in northern Yemen. And they want to create like a federal autonomous republic. They'll have their communist government in the south. The Houthis will have an Islamic state, not an Islamic state, not ISIS, but they'll have, like Iran, like an Islamic republic in the north. They'll have a region for the, where the Sunnis, the Wahhabi Sunnis can do their thing. They want to create like a federated republic. That's the demand of Ansar Allah and the what they call the Revolutionary Coalition. Whereas the Saudis want to restore Mansour Hadi, who is their puppet. They want to make him the president of the whole country. There's also something called the Arab Spring Party that is in the south that are like feminists, but they're very anti-Saudi Arabia, and they originally were probably funded by the American government. And this goes to show you there's many different factions. The Arab Spring Party in Yemen was probably some kind of CIA human rights thing originally, right? It was feminists, Arab Spring Party, modernization, democracy. But they saw that Saudi Arabia was their enemy, that America was supporting Saudi Arabia, and they ended up aligning with the Houthis, right? So it shows you just because somebody got some funding or some backing by the American government at one point doesn't mean they can't switch sides. The Arab Spring Party is on the side of the Houthis. It's complicated. These things are complicated, right? And the reason that the war in Yemen isn't just immediately ending is because it's not just a matter of Iran and Saudi Arabia shaking hands and then it's over. Because, again, I keep coming back to my book, right? Chapter 3 of my book, I talk about non-state actors, fourth generation warfare, William S. Lind, right? You have to understand that in the 21st century, war is generally not fought by states. It is fought by non-state actors. And non-state actors, while they may be supported by states, they have their own agenda. Non-state actors, they might get support from a government here or a government there, but they ultimately serve themselves and they have their own agenda, and they will evolve and adapt and make alliances based on their own interests. Go read chapter 3 of my new book, Counter Gangs. And, the Chinese Communist Party, the Bolsheviks, many of these non-state actors throughout history. You talk about G9, this gang organization in Haiti that is very pivotal, that is sympathetic to Russia. There is a lot you need to understand about movements around the world, right? That non-state actors have their own agenda. So the Houthis aren't just going to stop fighting because Iran tells them to, right? Iran may have supported them, given them some weapons or some support, but that doesn't mean that Iran controls them, right? They're not Iranian puppets. They're not Iranian agents. They're Houthis. They have their religion. They're mountain people, and they've been fighting since 2003. They've been waging an armed struggle against the government of Yemen. The government of Yemen was basically denying them the right to bear arms, trying to take away their guns, trying to suppress their religious services. So they took up arms, and they've been waging a guerrilla war in the mountains against the Yemeni government since 2003. They're not just going to call it off because Iran and Saudi Arabia get along. So I hope that this is helpful in understanding the situation in Yemen. All right, next question. Garland and Uhuru. All right. Now we know why they call Chicago the capital of socialist America. William Z. Foster, in his Towards Soviet America, he says that the capital of Soviet America will be Chicago, an industrial city. So there you go. Beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. All right, David Fox. Diamonds are formed under pressure, and everyone in CPI has done well. F the wreckers. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? We lost some people, we did. And, as I said, people that weren't part of the wrecking on us are welcome to come back. People that were part of the attack on us are not welcome to come back. But people that were part of, people that just got demoralized or got confused or didn't know what was going on, they're welcome to return, right? And people make mistakes. I obviously made some mistakes. Other people obviously made some mistakes. So if people got upset about what happened, they didn't know, I couldn't talk about it, right? In the aftermath of the initial attack, I couldn't talk about it. So a lot of people didn't know what was going on. They got very angry. They got confused, and that's okay. And those people are welcome to return. But honestly, there were some people who were not part of the initial attack who wrecked the organization. They played a very negative role. I'm not going to name names because that's not productive. And I don't want to have a big rivalry with these people that goes on forever. But there were also some people that reacted to the document in ways that hurt us as an organization. And that sucked because we would probably still have a lot more members if that hadn't happened. But honestly, I'm glad those people are gone. I'm glad they're gone. Because if they couldn't handle what happened, if they reacted to this, I mean, we're going to be targeted by the American government, folks. You don't become a revolutionary anti-imperialist in America because you want to fit in. You get into this because you expect persecution, right? You expect persecution. We are in the homeland of imperialism. The American government goes all over the world to make sure that no country has a communist revolution. Do you think that they're not going to come down like a ton of bricks on any communist revolutionaries right here in the United States? Of course they will. We expect persecution. Gus Hall went to prison. William Z. Foster went to prison, and we expect persecution. And if we are not getting persecution, look, I hate to say it this way, right? And sometimes this can lead to some anti-populism. But if you live in an evil society like America, like this country right now, I love America, I love my people, but our system is evil. We're killing our children with opioids, and we're pumping depression into our children so they kill themselves at record rates. We're bombing countries all over the world. We've been at war for generations, killing people. America is ruled by Satan, okay? And there's no way to deny that, right? And if you're living in a country that is ruled by Satan and you're not being persecuted, you are not living a moral and righteous life. And there is no way to avoid that. And I don't want to sound like the weathermen, and average people are not our enemy. And we're not just, we're not the good Americans in Nazi Germany. I don't want to fall into anti-populism, okay? But I'm telling you that if you live in Satan's kingdom and he's not persecuting you, you're not living a moral, righteous life. That is a fact. Satan rules America. Look at what was done to Iraq for the weapons of mass destruction they didn't have. Satan. Look at what was done to Libya, the most prosperous country on the African continent. Satan. Look at what they're doing in Ukraine right now, arming the Nazis, destroying this country, keeping this war going. Satan, right? Look at the prison industrial complex. More people locked away. The war on drugs, destroying people's lives. Satan. Look at what they've done, the depression, the opioids. Satan. This country is ruled by Satan. And if you live in Satan's kingdom and you are not getting persecuted, you're not living a righteous life. You are not living a moral life if you are not being persecuted in America. Doesn't mean we're better, and we should not fall into elitism, and we should not hate the masses of people because they are the real heroes, right? The masses are the real heroes, and they will make history when the time is right. But we must acknowledge that if we're going to be who we are, if we're going to be anti-imperialists, if we're going to be fighters for the working class in the center of this empire, we will face persecution. And one thing I see a lot of this, is people who fall into this mindset that if we get persecuted, it's our fault. I cannot get over this. So many people have it in their heads that the reason BreadTube makes fun of me and is because I'm just stupid or I'm just silly or I have a funny haircut or something. Folks, they would make fun of anything. You can watch streams of Thought Slime where he makes fun of me for drinking tea, right? I mean, they will make fun of you for anything, right? They have been assigned to go after me because of what my job is, because of the organization I'm building, because of the positions I take. It's obvious. They're all pro-imperialist leftists, right? Who don't support the anti-imperialist countries, don't have revolutionary defeatism, are on the side of U.S. imperialism all over the world. No matter what I do, they are going to make fun of me. They're going to insult me. And if you're one of those people who can't get it through your head that the reason I'm being targeted is not because, Midwest Marks, right? Good people at Midwest Marks. They do good work, but they really do believe that if they just tap dance around, if they just tap dance around the right way, they're not going to be called Nazis. Bullshit. They're already calling them Nazis, right? And if they denounce LaRouche, we won't work with LaRouche. Taryn Fivik. They don't work with LaRouche. Okay, they're good. No, it doesn't work like that. No, if you are doing the right thing, Satan will persecute you. And I guess I'm bothered by some people just have to learn this on the battlefield, right? Look, Rainer Shea, he's learning this, right? Rainer Shea has been very hostile to us in the past, but he made a morning message to support the CPI. He supported the Rage Against the War Machine rally. He's not a member of the CPI, but he's starting to get it. Right? He sees how insane these people are. He sees how they're going after humanity for peace, and he's getting it. Right? Rainer, he's a young guy, and he was hostile to us. All he knew was the YouTube videos and all of that. But now he's thrown his hat into the ring. He's writing articles. He's doing anti-imperialist commentary. He realized you have to support the Rage Against the War Machine, right? And so he gets it, right? He's learning. He's a young guy. When I was 19, I was working for Bob Avakian. People, you have to learn through the battlefield. And I think Midwest Marks will learn it through the battlefield. What I don't appreciate is that there is a little bit of a smugness. There's an assumption that I'm just stupid, right? The reason I've been persecuted is because I'm just stupid, right? I don't know what they know. I don't appreciate that. I'm not stupid. Read my books. I am not stupid, right? Look at all that I've done. Watch the videos of all the things I've done in the working class movement. I have experience. I know how to organize. I've gotten shit done. No, the reason that I'm being persecuted, the reason I've had my reputation run through the mud, the reason they have done everything they can to get people to hate me and destroy our organization is not because I'm just stupid. I didn't do the right tap dance or whatever. No, right? And I don't appreciate the arrogance, but they'll learn. They'll learn. And the thing is, right, these people are all getting targeted. They're all getting smeared. And, we at CPI, we have learned the art of holding the fort and withstanding. And holding the fort and withstanding like a solid block. That's what we've learned the art of doing, right? And so as other people start to do the kind of work that we do and they get attacked, they're going to see that we've been attacked and we are a solid block and they are going to drift closer to us. And it's just a matter of time. I mean, more people are going to see that. They're going to be subject to the same kind of character assassination, the same kind of smears. There's going to be more probably government persecution, right? And people will see that we're solid, that CPI is not for the squeamish. CPI is not for cowards. CPI is not for weaklings. CPI is for people that are prepared to endure persecution at the hands of the enemy. And people are going to see that, and they're going to realize that we're solid. We're solid like a rock. And as a result, they're going to drift closer to us. And people that aren't, look, I mean, again, people are welcome to rejoin. But some people reacted very negatively to what happened back in August, and they're gone. And, if you can't take the heat, get out of the sun, right? And if you're going to respond to that crisis by making things worse, you really ought to get lost. And if you can't handle, some sex gossip on the internet, I mean, you can't handle some sex gossip on the internet. I don't know what you're going to do if the government raids our homes. I don't know what you're going to do if, World War III breaks out. You know what I'm saying? We have got to build the network. The storm is coming, and we got to build the ship, and we got to be prepared to ride out the storm. and we need to make as many allies and friends, in the political, establishment as we can. People that, there's starting to be some anti-imperialist sentiments within the state. We need to make allies and friends, and we need to solidify our community. Our community needs to be stuck together like glue. We need to be solid as a rock. That's why every morning we're starting with the CPI morning message. That's important. Every morning people check in and they get a message from the CPI community. That's why we have the Pledge of Unity. That's why we have the ceremonies. We got to be solid like a rock. We got to be solid like a rock. We got to be solid like glue, so that when the storm comes, we can lock arms and get shit done for real, right? The storm is coming. We're not going to make the storm come, but it's coming. The storm is coming. You mark my words. The storm is getting closer every day. And when that storm comes, it's not a matter of how many members we have. It's a matter of how solid and effective the members we have. We got to be solid as a rock. We got to be tough as nails. And so I am focused on building this community and making it solid as a rock. And those who couldn't withstand, whatever, if you want to rejoin, if you want to give us another try, you learn something out there in the world, you want to come back, great. We'd love to have you. You know what I mean? I'm just telling you that, we are focused on building our community right now. And I got to tell you, folks, I am done. I mean, I don't know. I shouldn't say I'm done, but I am tired of social media personalities. I'm really tired of them, right? I mean, and I am one kind of, but I'm really tired of them, right? Because, you have to tap dance around them, and they denounce you a week after you have them at their conference, and they don't want to build an organization, a lot of them, and they're all so drama focused, and I'm really tired of them. I don't know what we're doing going forward. We have different plans, about different conferences. We want to do Portland this fall, and we're trying to figure out exactly how that's going to go down, where the funds will come from, who's going to speak at the conference and all that. But I got to tell you, we had a great conference in Austin, Haas, Hinkle, Samira, and then they didn't come to our conference in Chicago, and then we got attacked, and now there's all this. I just got to tell you, and some of the shit that's been talked about us by other people after the Rage Against the War Machine, I'm tired of this. I'm just tired of it. You know what I mean? And that, look, I mean, we just have we need to fill auditoriums up with people who want to see the Center for Political Innovation, right? And it's going to be harder, and it's going to require outreach. We need to become an outreach-oriented organization, right? We have to be an outreach-oriented organization. The internet is rigged against us, so we have to knock on doors. So we have to meet people on their campuses. We have to put up posters. We got to do it the old-fashioned way, because the internet is rigged. Social media is rigged. And we have got to get out of the movement. We got to get to the masses, and we have to fill up auditoriums with people that are there to see the CPI, not there to see some Twitch streamer, and this is hard work, and it's not easy, but we've got to build a movement, and that it's hard work. So there you go. It's also necessary to understand out of the movement to the masses in case some web color hair kids use this against you. Well, I don't know why web color hair kids would use that against me. You know what I mean? When I said out of the movement to the masses, I meant out of wokeism. I meant out of the synthetic left. And we need average people to join. We don't need to recruit among leftists, right? That's what I was referring to. And that, I was in the Workers' World Party for many years, and it was constantly the movement. We got to build the movement. What's the movement doing? And this movement was liberal Democrats. Whatever liberals are doing, that's the movement. And that's PSL's strategy, right? Whatever liberals are doing, gun control, abortion rights, whatever liberals are doing, Black Lives Matter, whatever liberals are doing, they try to set up the stage. They try to protest for it. They try to be the stage managers of whatever the liberals are doing, right? And out of the movement to the masses is, I don't want to recruit the people that are I don't want to recruit Rachel Maddow fans who are going to liberal rallies. I want to recruit average working class people. I want to recruit people who've never met a communist, have no idea why anyone would ever be one. That's who I want to recruit. I want to recruit Christians. I want to recruit people who are in the military. I want to recruit, low-income working people. I want to recruit people in neighborhoods all across this country who've never met anyone who thinks the way we think. I'm not interested in doing the woke thing anymore. Out of the movement to the masses. And that the more you try to play the woke people's rules, the less effective you're going to be. It's like you have to trade your own effectiveness right? I mean, it's like, and that's why I'm not in favor of left unity, right? People always ask me about left unity. And it's like, first of all, right? This is one of the most common things. Someone becomes a communist. They're like, oh, why don't all the communist parties combine? Well, there's reasons that they don't combine, okay? And if they were going to combine, they would have done it by now. But second of all the communist groups in America are so small and so isolated. In order to build some kind of alliance among them, you would have to accommodate so much of their backwardness that it wouldn't be worth it. I want unity with the masses, not unity with the left, okay? And that honestly, I don't care about offending the left. And that's what Out of the Movement to the Masses is about. I don't care about offending the left. I don't care if people on the internet who think they're communists. I was talking to somebody today. It used to be that if you became a communist, you joined one of the various communist groups. There were a million little tiny Trotskyite organizations and stuff like that. Now, if you become a communist, you just get on the internet. All right. The internet is full of people who think they're communists and never joined any of these groups. When I first came to New York City in 2005, there was a different Trotskyite newspaper selling group on every corner. Now, at this point, people who become communists, they just get on the internet and talk at each other. I mean, there's the groups themselves are dying. So there you go. I don't know what more to say about it, but there you go. You Are My Savior is Vosh fed. I mean, John, I don't know what to tell you. I wrote a whole book called Bread Tube Serves Imperialism, and then there was more information that was revealed that confirmed at this point everything I was saying. The Uhuru movement got their homes raided by the FBI. And so Vosh, rather than condemning this raid on the homes of black revolutionaries by the FBI, on his stream, he declared them to be Black Hammer and tried to say the raids were because of Black Hammer stuff. Now, that doesn't tell you exactly who Vosh works for. I don't know what to tell you, right? He literally lied to try and convince you that the FBI raiding the home of a black revolutionary group is good. That smoking gun. I mean, what kind of anti-imperialist, what kind of anti-racist, what kind of pro-black, whatever he wants to be. The FBI raids the homes of a bunch of black revolutionaries. And instead of condemning it, he lies and claims that they're the same organization as someone else and comes up with some cancel culture, social media drama and says it's okay. Right? No communist does that. No communist does that. Right? No genuine anti-racist, no genuine anti-deep state person does that. Right? We've seen what he's done to me, trying to tell people I'm the same as a Nazi, hoping that I'll get murdered by Antifa, trying to incite violence against me, telling, and it's, because of people like Vosh, it's just common knowledge that I'm a white supremacist, even though I'm, my record of anti-racism and, it doesn't matter. It's on the internet. The internet said so. Everyone knows he's a white nationalist. I'm not. I've never been a white nationalist, never had anything to do with white nationalism. Right. But, put me aside. The fact that when Uhuru got raided by the FBI, a group of black revolutionaries had their homes raided by the FBI, accused of being Russian agents, Vosh told his viewers that was a good thing and tried to say they were the same as this other group and came up with some social media drama to convince his viewers that the FBI breaking into the homes of an 80-year-old man who's a longtime black freedom fighter, former Black Panther, pointing a gun at his head was a good thing. Vosh is running public relations for the FBI. He may not know it, but he's basically doing public relations work for the American policing agencies at that point, right? I mean, that's the equivalent of like when they killed Fred Hampton. If like Vosh announced that Fred Hampton was racist or something. I mean, it's like, after they raided the home of Fred Hampton and murdered Fred Hampton, the front page of the Chicago Tribune said, "Vicious Panther attack, 2 left dead." They didn't mention that the 2 people that were left dead were Black Panthers. That's what Vosh did, right? He was the equivalent of the Chicago Tribune. The day after Fred Hampton was killed, the front page of the newspaper, "Vicious Panther attack, 2 left dead," right? Vosh, black Uhuru movement gets raided by the FBI, and Vosh says, oh, they're a cult and somebody died, and it says a bunch of stuff that's about another group that's not them, and he justifies it. Right? So, I mean, whether Vosh knows it or not, whether he's a conscious actor or not, Vosh is doing public relations for the FBI to help them imprison and to convince leftists to support the jailing and repression of black revolutionaries. And ContraPoints is being promoted by Hillary Clinton. And Abigail Thorne is on the payroll of the British government and the royal family. And Steve Hassan is advising all of them. And I know that for a fact. So, I mean, need I go on? All right. Can you contrast the defining characteristics of German, Japanese, Italian, and Spanish fascism, and also what kept Spain from allying with the Axis powers during World War II? Wow, that's a lot there. I think that Spain realized that it didn't want to risk. It was neutral in World War II, and that it could just, by staying out of it, it would be a lot safer. And that Spain has ties in South America, but Spain had its own interest. And that my understanding is that Franco was a little bit different than some of the original fascists, right? There was like that some of the original phalangists, there was like there was like a pro-Nazi wing of the phalangist movement, and he fought with them. And it basically, he didn't want to go down. He saw that Hitler was kind of isolating himself. He didn't want to completely lose the British. Winston Churchill praised Franco and defended Franco in the Spanish Civil War. If you read Winston Churchill, his history of World War II, he smears the communists. He says the communists were all over Spain raping and killing nuns, and he defends Franco. He basically didn't want to cut ties with the British Empire, right? He didn't want to lose the British Empire. German fascism was National Socialism. They had this whole thing about Wagner and knights and castles, and they were they were into the medieval stuff and honor and Germany, and they had all this stuff. Italian fascism had an oddly science fiction. There was the futurist movement, which was this artistic movement that existed, that was very masculine, but it was obsessed with scientific progress. I don't necessarily think Japan was completely fascist. I think that Japan, it had been, the emperor, it was a monarchy. And there was like a Bonapartist purge in Japan prior to the Second World War, right? In Japan, there was a widespread, there was a bunch of assassinations, and there was the Black Dragon Society. There's a river in China that the Japanese called the Black Dragon River, and they had the Black Dragon Society, which was a secret society among the military that assassinated a bunch of generals and officials who weren't on their side in order to set the stage for launching World War II. So that happened, but I don't think Japan was exactly fascist. Japan was an authoritarian military state. Japan had never really been a liberal democracy. It had always been a monarchy, and Japan, it became thoroughly militarized and aggressive in its imperialism, and it ultimately aligned. And the Chinese Revolution was a big threat to Japan, and they were the colonizer of Korea. And it makes sense why they aligned with the Axis powers, and they were pro-fascist. They were fascist sympathizers. But I don't think that they were fascist in the scientific Marxist sense. I think they were just kind of an rising imperialist power. Italy was definitely fascist, but its fascism had a different, the fascisti and the corporate state, etc. German fascism had the mystical, Wagnerian admiration for feudalism, National Socialism, anti-Semitism. Italian fascism didn't have anti-Semitism in it, right? In Italy, there were actually Jewish people in the government, in Mussolini's government. So yes, all of these, fascism always looks different. Fascism is not about what you say, it's about what you do. And this is really important, because all this stuff about the fascist aesthetic and all of this, the Italian fascists sounded one way, the Nazis sounded one way, the phalangists sounded one way. Fascism is about what you do, it's not about what you say. Right? And that's why all this bullshit about the fascist aesthetic, this is all a Congress for Cultural Freedom thing. Oh my God, fascism is big groups of people. It's the amassing of things. Susan Sontag had this whole thing about the fascist aesthetic and fascinating fascism. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit, right? She's referring to mass movements. That's what she's referring to. That's what she's referring to, is mass movements of any kind, right? That fascism is not an aesthetic. It is not an ideology. And if you read R. Palm Dutt, he goes into this. They make up the ideology to justify what they're already doing, right? The ideology comes second, right? They make up some ideology to justify what they're already doing. And the ideology of fascism tends to have elements of conservatism, tends to have nationalism, tends to have vague anti-capitalism and populism in it. Fascism is always a new mixed bag. The Ku Klux Klan sounded nothing like the Nazis in Germany, and they sounded, and the Black Hundreds of Russia. The fascist movements, they make up their shit as they go along. Fascism is about what you do. It's not about what you say. Okay? It's not about what you say, it's about what you do, and it's about saving capitalism with degrowth and mobilizing a mass movement to set up an authoritarian state in order to impose degrowth to save capitalism. That's the essence of fascism. Among communists, you generally get three definitions of fascism. Your general mainline communists and social democrats say fascism is just the right wing. It's conservatives, right? If the Republicans become more authoritarian, then they're fascist. Trotskyites say fascism is a middle-class movement that's against both big capital and the labor movement, and it's fomented by the big bourgeoisie to set the stage for a police state. That's kind of true, right? Fascism tends to be middle-class radicalism as opposed to the communist movement. And then there's an ultra-left definition of fascism where they say fascism is an attempt to imitate socialism. It's like fake socialism, right? They call social democrats social fascists. All three of those definitions have an element of truth. But if you really want to understand the economics of fascism, which is degrowth, read Fascism and Social Revolution by R. Palm Dutt. Or if you want to read a more up-to-date piece of writing, read Where is America Going? Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution by yours truly, Caleb Maupin, because I talk a lot about what fascism actually is. Degrowth economics. It is the attempt to save capitalism with forced degrowth, which requires an authoritarian state, which requires a mass, conditioning of the public, mass brainwashing, mass, mind control, etc. But it's degrowth. It is an attempt to save capitalism with degrowth. That's what fascism is. That's the essence of fascism. And you'll learn that from Dutt, and you'll learn that from my book. All right. Cornel West and I align almost everything except Iran. Are there any issues you disagree with him on? Thoughts on his candidacy? Yes, there are many of issues I disagree with Cornel West on, but he's still great. I mean, anything but Biden. We don't endorse any candidate, and there's things about him. What I don't agree with Cornel West on, if you want my differences with Cornel West, on Russia. He insists, he calls Putin a mass murderer. He says Putin's not justified. Putin's trying to protect the people of the eastern regions, right? And he doesn't get that. He condemns Russia for trying to protect, the people of Donbass. And so he's wrong on that. Furthermore, he refers to Trump supporters as fascists. He calls Trump a neo-fascist. He says things like, well, neoliberalism and neo-fascism is not a choice at all. Trumpers are not fascists, right? And the labeling of Trump supporters as fascists is a way to justify supporting the Democrats. And it demonizes them. Millions of Americans voted for Donald Trump because they want a better life. They want jobs and better education. They want to, in their mind, make America great again means rebuilding the country. And they voted for him because he wants to stop the wars. And if you call Trump supporters fascists, they're never going to listen to you. So him calling Trump supporters fascists, that was deeply wrong, right? I don't agree with that either. Those are my three biggest criticisms: Iran, Russia, and calling Trump supporters fascists. I also think it was wrong of him to run on the Green Party ticket. He should have stuck with the People's Party. The People's Party has the potential to be a real party. The Green Party, they run in every election and they lose. They are expert losers. They're on the ballot in a bunch of states and they run and they lose. They have been running and losing for years. They ran Cynthia McKinney, who I voted for in 2008. She lost. They ran, what's his name? I don't even remember, the guy with the weird, accent. What's his name? I interviewed him on this YouTube channel. I can't remember his name. It talks like this. What was that guy's name? It talks like this. I want to talk to Jimmy Dore. I'm going to talk to him. Howie Hawkins. They ran Howie Hawkins and he lost, right? They run people and they lose. They ran David Cobb and he lost, right? They are really, really good at running people and losing. They're just kind of the hippie party that's on the ballot in all the elections. And their name, Green, is degrowth. It's synonymous with degrowth. Now, many people say, well, I'm an environmentalist. I don't agree with degrowth. Fine. But Green New Deal, green is the color of degrowth. The People's Party, on the other hand, was about the Bernie Sanders economic agenda, and it has moved in an anti-imperialist direction, rage against the war machine, etc. Right? So if he had run with the People's Party, and it was Nick Brana, by the way, that made him run, okay? And thank you, Felonious Punk. Nick Brana is the guy who really is responsible for Cornel West running for president. He made it happen. He worked with Cornel West and all of that. So, Nick Brana really made it happen. If it weren't for the People's Party, Cornel West would never have run to begin with. And he ran with the People's Party, and then they got to him. So he switched. You know what I mean? And I don't endorse any candidate. So CPI, we are friendly with RFK supporters. We are friendly with the supporters of Marianne Williamson. We are friendly with the supporters of Cornel West. We are friendly with Trump supporters. You know what I mean? Not too keen on Biden and Kamala Harris, but we want to talk to all dissidents, and we want to engage with them about the Center for Political Innovation and our message. So, we don't play favorites among the candidates in the major elections. We don't, right? We want to talk to everybody, and we are about educating people about anti-imperialism and building a network of people who engage in anti-imperialist work and support each other. We're not a political party. We can't run in elections or anything like that. So, I mean, look, RFK, his stance on Israel is abominable. But if you then, just call him out with his hatred, like I've seen a lot of people do, you lose any access to his supporters, and anyone who might be attracted to the good things he says, you lose any access to them, right? I am about trying to build an anti-imperialist network, trying to build an anti-imperialist movement. And that's what I'm about. And that, if people want to call out and criticize Cornel West or RFK or Marianne Williamson, they're welcome to do so. But I want CPI, our organization, to be able to win people from dissident campaigns. That's what I want to do, right? We need to recruit people from dissident campaigns. That is something we absolutely urgently must do. I've got some interesting projects in the works, and we are planning to, it looks like we're going to have some kind of conference this fall in Oregon, which I think is great. But we're trying to figure out how we can make it count, right? It needs to count. We're endorsing the August 6th. I'll put it on the screen again. Very important day of action. No more Hiroshimas, right? This is going to be a very important day of action, right? I hope you're there in New York City. I hope you're there around the country. We need people there. It's going to be a very important day of action. Chicago's doing stuff, Portland, but I'll be at the New York one. We need people doing stuff, but we are trying to figure out how we can win people to join our anti-imperialist education project. That's what we're focused on. So on that note, it's been well over 3 hours. I don't see any more super chat questions that have come in. Oh, no, there's one more. Would a socialist U.S. be structurally different? Would there still be a Senate, Electoral College, FBI, and CIA? Well, glad you asked, Daniel. Well, this is the last question I've got. If anyone has any more super chats, keep them going, right? I've still got energy, right? I can talk for 3 hours. Shit, look at me. So Daniel J on the Rockfin, he asked, would a socialist U.S. government be structured different? Would there still be a Senate, Electoral College, FBI, and CIA? All right. So this is my understanding, is that socialism requires a new state. You cannot build socialism with the capitalist state. And the essence of the state is bodies of armed men, the military and the policing agencies. That said, we advocate a peaceful transition. We advocate getting elected. We advocate implementing our program within the current legal structure with the understanding that this would put forces into motions that would eventually require the creation of a new state, right? You would have to change the nature of the military. In Venezuela, they have changed the nature of the military. The Venezuelan military has been completely reinvented so they can have socialism in Venezuela. The military of Venezuela is trained in Cuba. They have Marxist classes in the military. They completely changed the nature of the military, right? In Iran, after they had the Islamic Revolution, they formed the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, it's the biggest economic entity in the country, which is a military organization based on their revolutionary Islamic principles. And that you would have to abolish the FBI, you'd have to abolish the CIA and replace them with intelligence agencies that are designed to serve an anti-imperialist agenda. The FBI was founded to fight communists, right? J. Edgar Hoover founded it specifically to be an anti-communist organization. Now, they do other things at the FBI. That's not their only focus, but they were founded explicitly to be an anti-communist organization, right? And that, the way the FBI folks are trained, the way that, there's ideology there. And that's one of the myths of bourgeois societies. They claim they have no ideology, right? That the FBI just enforces the law. Bullshit. The FBI is very much an ideological organization. If there ever was an ideological organization, those FBI agents, they learn ideology. And that's why so many of them are Mormons. So many of them are Catholics and conservative Catholics, and that they teach them ideology, right? The FBI is full of ideology, right? Well, communist governments admit that they have ideology. The Little Red Book, this was written to be part of a soldier's equipment. Mao admitted the Red Army that he was building, the People's Liberation Army, was ideological. They didn't pretend it wasn't. Well, the old bourgeois institutions, the U.S. military, the Pentagon, the way they're set up, they push an ideology. And part of the transition to socialism, which we advocate being peaceful, right? We are in favor of a peaceful transition to socialism, would be changing the nature of the military, changing the nature of the policing agencies. Absolutely. All right. Now, it appears there are not any further questions. If there's anything else, if anyone else wants to send a super chat or a Rumble rant or a Rockfin tip, please do so. We always appreciate any questions people have. But it looks like I don't see any more questions. And it's been well over 3 hours. So I'm going to end the stream for now. I'll be back tomorrow night for sure. So, yeah, I'm going to put on the closing music. And wait. Hold up. What do you know about CBDCs? I don't know what that acronym stands for. CBDCs. I'm going to have to Google that. CBDCs. Question mark. What is a CBDC? CBDCs. CBDC is a cause for concern. Central bank digital currency. I know absolutely nothing about it. I just Googled it. I didn't even know what it was, right? I have not heard of central bank digital currencies. I don't know enough about it. Felonious Punk. I honestly, I use cryptocurrency, but at the same time, I'm critical of it, right? I am critical of it because of the fact, that I'm critical of it because, you're making value out of nothing, right? You're making value out of nothing. So I'm critical of it. But at the same time, they can't control it, right? That's why the imperialists don't like it. That's why so many crypto bros have fled to Russia. So I am not anti-crypto, and I think it should be legal, and I use it. I'd be a hypocrite if I was against it. But it's not, it's not real value, okay? It's fictitious capital, right? You can turn it into money that you can spend, but no value is being created in crypto. Oh, this is great. Degrowth is not real. Really? Tell that to Iraq. They've been degrown by the U.S. invasion. Tell that to Libya. It used to be the most prosperous country on the African continent, and they got degrown by a U.S. military intervention. Tell that to the people of this country who are seeing the roads crumbling and the infrastructure. Tell that to the people in, Barack Obama, who went to Africa and told the people in Africa that if they couldn't have air conditioning and they couldn't have electricity because it would destroy Mother Earth. Tell that to the people of Sri Lanka who had BlackRock, tell them to adopt organic farming, and then it wrecked their agriculture and their crop output. How is it not real? There's books promoting it. The ruling class, read Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum. Degrowth is absolutely real. So it's absolutely real, and it is the basis of fascism, and I will not be degrown, and the American people won't be degrown. Russia will not be degrown. Look, they've degrown Iraq. They degrew Libya. They're trying to destroy and tear down independent governments around the world, and we're not going to have it. How can Russia be anti-imperialist when they stole Luhansk? They didn't steal Luhansk. The USA overthrew the Ukrainian government in 2014, and then the government in Kiev started bombing those regions and killing the people there. The people declared independence, and Russia said, we support the Minsk agreement and wanted them to reintegrate in Ukraine. And Ukraine wouldn't accept it. And so for 8 years straight, the Ukrainian government has been bombing and murdering the people of Luhansk and Donbass and Donetsk and Odessa and has been killing them. And so finally, after 8 years, Russia moved in to protect them. You want to tell me that Russia is somehow imperialist? I'm going to show you a picture that you will never see on mainstream media. They've even taken down the Wikipedia page. They don't want you to see this picture, right? I'm going to show you a picture that you need to see, right? If you think that Russia is somehow being imperialist, you know nothing about what you're talking about, and that's because you have never seen this picture. And I understand why you might think that, because again, US media only tells you what they want you to hear. But I want you to take a look at this picture, right? If you think that Russia is somehow being imperialist, right? All of those are children who were killed by the Ukrainian government. For 8 years, it's been bombing the eastern regions. They've killed 14,000 people. These are all innocent children who were killed with U.S.-made weapons supplied to the government in Kiev. For 8 years, it's been bombing and killing the people of Donbass, killing them for 8 straight years. This is a monument called the Alley of Angels, and they took down the Wikipedia page of it because Wikipedia is rigged, right? For 8 years, they've been killing the people of Donbass, right? And so Russia moved in and did what they have been asking for Russia to do for 8 years, to protect them from a government that was imposed on Ukraine by the United States, right? After the USA toppled the Ukrainian government, for 8 years, they've been begging Russia to protect them. They voted to join with Russia. They voted to be independent before that. You have no idea what you're talking about. And also, imperialism is not a synonym for country invading country. Imperialism is a global economic system. Go read Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism, which is a very, very important book. Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism, right? Which goes into great detail about how imperialism is an economic system, about keeping the world poor. And the reason they hate Russia is because Russia broke out of that system. In the 1990s, the imperialists sunk their fangs into Russia. People were starving. People were dying. Putin put oil and gas under state ownership and raised the country up. He raised the country up. He raised people out of poverty. And that's why they want to destroy Russia. So you have no idea what imperialism is. You have no idea what the war in Ukraine is even about. You think what CNN said, that Putin was having a bad day and said, I want to kill some Ukrainians, and went in there, and you have no idea what you're talking about, right? That's why they never want to tell you the facts about what's actually happening in this war, right? And you tell me to touch grass. The whole reason they hate me is because I'm building an in real life movement. I'm on here promoting a demonstration that my organization is endorsing, that we're all going to attend. You're telling me to touch grass. We just had a big rally in New York City, big event in New York City. We just had a big conference in Washington, D.C. Before that, we were sponsors of the Rage Against the War Machine. We do real life shit. We're in the streets organizing all the time. We touch grass, my friend. We're in the streets building a real movement, right? We're not just on here streaming. We are building a real organization. You tell us to touch grass. We just had a workshop in Missouri, right? We had a workshop, out in the middle of the countryside in Missouri, like a 2-day workshop that we did. We touch grass. We do real stuff, right? So you have no clue what you're talking about, my friend. But I do appreciate your input. And it looks like now I will finally end the stream. Oh, shit, I keep pushing the wrong button. But I will end the stream. I'm going to put on the closing music. But it's been fun, and we'll be back. We'll be back. Don't be rude. Don't be rude. We'll be back. We'll be back. So see you tomorrow night, everybody. Upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.